ভুবনেশ্বর প্রভু, দয়াল ভুবনেশ্বর প্রভু, জয় ভুবনেশ্বর প্রভু কি জয়।
So we want to thank Nandanandan Prabhu for a very beautiful, heartfelt rendition of that wonderful song of Narottam Das Thakur that we always sing on the disappearance of the great Vaishnavas. So, oh, you're hit, okay. So first I'd like to call His Grace Mukunda Datta Prabhu, under whom Bhuvaneswara was serving, that make his offering at the lotus feet of Bhuvaneswara Prabhu.
Gurve Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo 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 Hare Hare. His Grace Bhuvaneswara Prabhu Ki. So, His Grace Bhuvaneswara Prabhu was cooking for the deities since more than 28 years. End of 91, beginning 92, he was cooking the Raj Bhog, and then also he was cooking the daily sweet. Means every offering we have a sweet which is offered for breakfast, lunch, Rajbhog, and then both evening artics. So that every day he was preparing, so that it is known as the daily sweet, either with kaju or some atta, and different kinds of sweets he was making every day. And at that time he was making also the burfi every day. For the deities. And so always when he was cooking, and then he used to cook in the mood I'm assisting Srimati Radharani, and that is actually the proper mood, as we know, because the deity seva is there according to Nitya Lila. The seva is known as, we say Archan or Nitya Seva, according to Nitya Lila. And so we know, it is mentioned in scriptures, that Srimati Radharani every day she's coming from Varshana to Nandagaon and she's cooking. Of course, Maria Yashoda, she's in charge of the whole house in Nanda Bhavan. But then she's telling Rohini Ma to please also cook some items. And then Srimati Radharani has been called and she's cooking most of the items. And she knows what Krishna likes. And then all the gopis and manjaris are there, the friends of Srimati Radharani. So, and they're cooking. So Bhuvaneswara Prabhu, he was in that mood that I'm helping Srimati Radharani cooking for Krishna. Of course, also, because we are sadhaka and we are performing devotional service under the instruction of the spiritual master, so he had always so much full faith in Srila Prabhupada and trying to please Prabhupada. So as sadhakas, we take shelter of Prabhupada, we worship the deities, we cook under Prabhupada's guidance for his pleasure. But then in the Siddhava story, if we are a little more advanced, then we take shelter of the gopis, of Srimati Radharani, to give pleasure to Krishna. So he was cooking in that mood always, serving his spiritual master Srila Prabhupada, and then helping Srimati Radharani. As we know, Nikunja Yuno Ratikeli Siddhai Ayali Bhir Yuktira Pikshaniya, the spiritual master is there in Nikunja Seva. In Nikunja Seva only the gopis are there, serving Krishna. So that is the mood in the service of the Lord, on the altar, in the kitchen also. And So even we have heard that Prabhupada said, from many sources, that actually he was referring here to one devotee, Vibhu Chaitanya, who was cooking before Bhuvaneswara Prabhu, from 76 till 91. Vibhu Chaitanya, wonderful devotee, he was cooking, and one time Prabhupada said, of course, so Vibhu Chaitanya was a wonderful devotee, expert cook, he was doing all the offerings, and he was saying the cook here, cooking for the deities, helping Srimati Radharani, is as important as a GBC. So, so because it is very, confidential service, most confidential service in Sri Vrindavan Dham. So anyhow, so after Vibhu Chaitanya left, and at that time, before I came, I was on the altar already at that time, but the previous head Pujari Purnachand Prabhu, so he was cooking a few days himself, and then some other devotees, my wife was cooking maybe for 3 months, the Rajbhog. And then Bhakti Bringi Govind Maharaj was a little time after Purnachand left, head Pujari, and then they asked me to do the seva, and then Bhuvaneswara Prabhu, so he was requesting if he could cook for the deities, and everyone was fine, and then he became the head cook when I became head Pujari. So early 92, January 92, 1st January 92. And so I had known Bhuvaneswar already from before, actually. I met him the first time in 1986, in January, in New York. I was for a little while, which was 3 years in New York, and he was just on his way to come to Vrindavan. And so we met in the temple, and already at that time, somehow we immediately had a good relationship, and we spoke together, and he's asking me where I'm from, what I'm doing here, and so we were speaking together, and then he was saying, yes, I'm going to Vrindavan, I want to stay there. And so then we had already at that time a little relationship, and then he went, and I was still for some time more in New York, but then 87, I also came back to Vrindavan. I had joined here, 1980. So and then at that time he had become the BBT in charge. And so at that time there was a small room in the Gurukul building downstairs. There's the Prasadam hall, which was there for the Gurukul, and the kitchen, Gurukul kitchen, and Gurukul go down. And after that, so the BBT office was there, and so he was in charge. And so then we met, and we became very good friends. Of course, I always, as a senior devotee, he was like my elder brother also. And almost every day I used to come and be with him, and we used to, and he was reading mostly from Srimad Bhagavatam or some nectar of devotion. And so we had this very wonderful relationship right from that time. So that was in 87. And so then, and already at that time I saw he's a very simple devotee, and trying to be a good brahmachari. And he was strict brahmachari, not speaking to women, not trying to look at women, and just being with the brahmacharis. And already at that time also he tried to always have some devotees come to him, and then he was speaking just about Krishna and about Mahaprabhu, about Prabhupada, and just like Gainda Prabhu also, practically not speaking any prajalpa, just about devotional service, about Krishna, and just doing his seva. So he was doing the seva in the BBT, as BBT in charge, till actually he became the head cook. So that was in 92. And so actually I was very happy that he joined, and when as I had been Pujari here since 1990, and then became head Pujari, and so I didn't have to worry about the kitchen. So he was the head cook, and he was in charge. He was not cooking as much as Bhuvaneswara Prabhu, who was cooking a whole day almost, but he was in charge, and he was making sure that in the morning the breakfast was nicely done, in the evening. So he used to come also and see how they're cooking, and so he was in charge, but he was just cooking the Raj Bhog at that time, and some other devotees were doing the evening offerings. And so year after year, and so we continued also our relationship, and I used to regularly be with him. And then, so then one time he had a little accident. Actually, it was just in maybe 14 years ago, 15 years ago. He was just a Mangalatik time, he wanted to come on the altar. He used to sometimes do Artik, Mangalatik and evening Artik. And he slipped and then he broke his hip. And so then he was hospitalized, and then he was, for some time he was not, so because of that, but then he had also a little bit, he was feeling, because he was not able to do seva, he was feeling a little, useless. I mean, he was expressing, I'm just useless, and so he had a little difficulty to cope with the situation that he's not able to do seva. And so that was almost 1 year, but then with the help of one devotee from Switzerland also, so he arranged for some medicines which helped him to be as he was again before. And he used to be called affectionately by his friends and as Boo. And so his heart was very, very, very sweet, and he was a soft devotee. But externally he was a little rough. So then grumpy Boo, they were telling some devotees. A little rough sometimes in speaking to others. Hey, come here, do this, do that. But his heart was very, very soft, and he was very, very sweet. But then the new devotees, and I mean the senior devotees, they have to be sometimes strong. But many times if one is strong, then they will say, oh, he's too strong. And if one is soft, then oh, he's too soft. He was too strong, and I was too soft. So, but actually we should be positive. If he's strong, it is good for us to be in line. And if one is soft, then it's good for us to take on some responsibility. So, and but basically, so the devotees also, although he was many times a little strong, but everyone was liking him also, because although he was strong, but at the same time he was affectionate also. And he used to give all the devotees who were helping him, he used to give prasadam and so and trying to help them also, whatever they needed. Sometimes some brahmacharis from the village, they come and then they want to have a watch, and then he had his friends from America, and then he used to ask his friends to bring some things, and then he was giving some devotees who joined and doing seva some watch and some different things, then they will be happy also. So he was a little rough and tough sometimes, but he was very, very kind and to the young devotees like a father, helping them also. And so many times when he used to come and see him, then he used to tell me also what he was reading, and then he used to ask me what I'm reading, and so we are discussing the transcendental subjects, matters of the Lord, and Prabhupada's books, and so that was a nice relationship, and actually I had a good relationship with him and Indra Prabhu, and also Indra Prabhu and Bhuvaneswara Prabhu had a good relationship, although everyone was, I mean, from even general devotees, Indra Prabhu was a kind of special person, Bhuvaneswara Prabhu was a kind of special person, and I guess myself too. But we had a good relationship. Also, he had a very good relationship with Mahanidhi Swami, very good relationship. So, but after the accident, so he had a kind of change of heart also, and so he tried to be more soft to the devotees also, and he felt that he should do something more than simply just cooking. And then he started to go on the altar actually very regularly. And then he was asking me to arrange so he can do Mangalatik or Sandhyatik in the evening. And then also he started doing Kirtan and morning time 7 o'clock till 7:15, and afternoon from 4 o'clock till 4:30. So that for more than practically 10 years he was doing that. And that really also changed his whole personality and his although he was already before, he was a nice and wonderful devotee. But even after that, when he started doing the deity worship and the kirtan, that was a whole level, other level of consciousness, and a higher level of consciousness, and so he became an even more wonderful devotee. And well, maybe 1 year ago, just to keep it short because many devotees are there, so he expressed to me that he's feeling weak, more and more weak, physically. And then he was asking me, so what shall I do now, if I cannot cook? And I said, well, I mean, you could try to follow in the footsteps of Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu and you can distribute Chanamrit. But somehow he didn't like the idea so much to distribute Chanamrit, and he said, no, he wasn't so interested. Then I said, well, then you just chant and you just read with the devotees and pass your days like this till you leave your body. And just like even Vibhu Chaitanya was doing Chanamrit Seva, but then afterwards when he couldn't do that, then he was just in his room and chanting and reading, and he had doing a little puja. So I explained to him in this way also. I mean, he was seeing it to me, and sometimes he was giving me some instructions, but many times also he was asking me questions in regards to the pastimes of the Lord, because I had read the books also of the Acharyas, previous Acharyas. After having read Prabhupada's books, Srimad Bhagavatam at least 6 times, and CC I read more than 10 times, just for information. So, and Prabhupada said that everyone who wants to know about Bhagavan, Bhakti and Bhakta must read the Brihad Bhagavatamrita. And referring also, I mean, for the devotees who have read scrutinizingly Prabhupada's books, they may read other books also, just to enrich their understanding. So then we had some nice conversations. And he was asking me also a few times about, well, shall I just have deities in the room also? And I was saying, well, you can come on the altar and then you can do some worship there, so which he did also. And but then one time he said, well, what about if I take Prabhupada and have Prabhupada in my room? I said, yeah, that's a good idea. And so what seva shall I do? I said, well, you just give him a little garland, a few flowers, and you can offer fruit. And he was doing that also for some time. But then after Radhashtami last year, again he was expressing that I'm not able to do the seva nicely, and then he had gone to a doctor also in Delhi, and then he came back, and then I asked him, so what did the doctor say? Well, he gave some medicine, but then he was saying the medicines are not working anymore. There's no use of that. And then, so already maybe since 3-4 years, he had stopped cooking on Ekadashi. Before he was cooking every day, every single day, even Ekadashi. Even many times I'd ask him, well, maybe some other devotees, and some devotees came to me, maybe you can let them cook, but he just wanted to cook himself. And then I let him do, just like Vibhu Chaitanya was also cooking everything himself. But then maybe 4 or 5 years ago it was, then he asked one devotee to do the cooking on Ekadashi, and then from that time on, or maybe even more than 6 years or 7 years. And then every day, every Ekadashi he used to go to Radha Damodar temple, every Ekadashi, and take darshan there and do parikrama, and then come back and used to chant more and read more on Ekadashi. So, till the lockdown actually, last year, he was doing that every Ekadashi. So, but then after Radhashtami, then he asked me to maybe ask some other devotees to cook, maybe one more time in a week. So then, basically 2 times a week, somebody else was cooking. And then a few weeks later, he just told me he cannot cook anymore. And then, first I was a little worried after Bhuvanesvara, who will cook? Because Raj Bhog, I mean, it takes, at least you have to be there at 8:30 till 11 o'clock, 2.5 hours. And I always had difficulty in getting devotees or pujaris to cook for the deities. But somehow we manage, and we have enough pujaris, and I was a little worried. But then by Krishna's mercy, we had a few devotees who are enthusiastic to cook, and now we have 4 devotees who are, one is cooking 3 days and the others are cooking one day. And so in this way the seva is going on, and they are cooking nicely also. The Raj Bhog and daily sweet also they are doing, and the Sandesh. And then, so that means maybe almost 8 months. So then he was just trying to cope with the situation again, feeling a little bit depressed, not able to do seva, but what to do. But at one point I told him also, well, maybe you just have to prepare to leave the body, and then, so maybe slowly but surely. But then he was not really ready, and then, but as time was going by, then he also realized that he has to leave the body, and to some point, it's some kind of, yes, we have to stop here, I guess, yeah. Hare Krishna. Thank you for reminding me. My time is up. So, wonderful devotee, and so, His Grace Bhuvanesvara Prabhu ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Sisi Gonitai ki, Krishna Balaram ki, Radha Shama Sundar ki. Hare Krishna.
So Prabhupada said he's as good as the GBC. Prabhupada told that the man who cooks, the devotee who cooks here, he's as good as the GBC. More than the GBC, all right. That's what I wanted to clarify. More than the GBC. So we'd like this, thank Mukunda Datta for this wonderful presentation of Bhuvaneswara's wonderful qualities, that he was more than the GBC. So next we'd like to ask our dear President Panchagoda Prabhu to make his offering. And we'd like to remind everyone there's a lot of devotees to speak, and we have some written offerings also, so try to keep it short and sweet.
HGBhuvanesvara ki. Well, Mukunda Datta said it all, so there's not much really. I came with my family in '93. I was the vice president for 7 years, and we spent a lot of time together. Boo would make invite for the Raj Bhog, and I said, "Oh, Boo, very good. No, not my fault. Radharani did it." And I was one of those that he would ask, when coming from America, make sure you bring me X, Y, Z, but mainly for the deities. You know, either ghee, honey, some other kind of supplies necessary for cooking the Raj Bhog, and also a few little electronic items so he can hear Bhagavatam and hear Prabhupada, and also hear the radio, the kirtan. Although he had a certain dry humor, I came in with my striped coat. He said, "Oh, you forgot to take off your pajamas. What happened?" So he would always call and say, "Are you still in Maya?" I said, "Boo, there was never a time I'm not in Maya, you know." He said, "You chanting your rounds?" But in a very friendly way, very nice way. And he'd only be in anxiety when he had to leave the country or leave his service to renew his visa. We all have that issue, that problem. And yeah, Bhuvaneswara, he would always be conscientious to, whenever senior people come, to give them maha. Even like we're on the, doing the greeting the deities, he'd give me a little bag. He said, taxes, giving a little piece of burfi. So he's a prime example of someone who has faith in their spiritual master. He did Radha Damodar, he understood the importance of book distribution and Sankirtan. Although very meek and humble, he understood the philosophy. He would read regularly. He would regularly read the Bhagavatam in the evenings, during the daytime, many times during... he was absorbed, and this is what Prabhupada wanted for us, to become absorbed, serving in Sri Vrindavan Dham. First of all, retire when you're 50 years old, give up your attachments and come and retire in Sri Vrindavan Dham. He did that, and in a very humorous way, in a very friendly way, and also in a very stern way sometimes, you know. he had a external demeanor about him. But he was definitely very soft-hearted and a wonderful Vaishnava. He set the proper example by engaging others in Krishna consciousness, showing by his personal example, doing the artiks, cooking for the deities, respecting the devotees, Vaishnavas. Anyway, Boo was very, very friendly to many. He'll be missed by the devotees, and also appreciate his achievements, his realizations, and knowing when his time is up, making how you say, glorious exit in Sri Vrindavan Dham. HGBhuvanesvara ki.
So we'd like to thank His Grace Panchagoda Prabhu for reminding us of the wonderful qualities of Bhuvaneswar. Next we have a letter from His Holiness Jayapataka Swami. My dear godbrother passes away. His Grace Bhuvaneswar Prabhu, my dear godbrother, left his body today. He was serving their lordship Sri Sri Gaurnitai, Sri Sri Krishna Balaram, Sri Sri Radha Shyam Sundar and Vrindavan Dham as head cook for many years. We are offering our prayers and respects to the departed soul and request all devotees to pray for the safe journey of the Atma of Bhuvaneswara Prabhu to the spiritual world. Hare Krishna, His Holiness Jayapataka Swami. Bhuvaneswara Prabhu ki. So next we'd like to request Shruti Kirti Prabhu to make his offering for Bhuvaneswara Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. I guess I first met Bhuvaneswara Prabhu in 1972, 1973 in Los Angeles. That's when I had become Prabhupada's servant, so that was my first trip to the West Coast. There were some pictures you can see on social media at the time. Bhuvaneswara, he looked the same then as he did now. He's one of the few people you could recognize in the photo. Yeah, you didn't have to say he's the person with the black. No, that was Boo then, you know. Of course, over the years, coming to Vrindavan, myself, I always stayed a short time, a few weeks, a month, a dozen or more times, 20 times. He was always here, he was always there, and he always communicated with everyone, you know. My association with him, sometimes he would bring me into his room for some Mahaprasadam, but then I usually met him here every morning, coming to Mangal Arati, coming to greet the deities. And when I came some 16 months ago, of course, you know, Boo had his services, so his one service was giving the Prabhupada Charnamrita every day at the end of the deity greeting. And of course, myself, being the puffed up person I am, I thought, I'm Prabhupada's servant, I should be doing this. So we had our little games we would play in front of Prabhupada, in front of Radha Shyama Sundar. He never once said, here, you do it today. But whenever I went towards it, he would always let me do it. So we had our special little competition for service. And also greeting the deities. Greeting the deities with Boo was also an experience. Very often he would say something, if he liked or didn't like, about their dress. He had very good eye, Boo, very understood colors. Not just cooking, Boo had a wide range of expertise. And I can remember here in front of Sri Sri Gaurnitai saying, that backdrop looks like it belongs on my dining room table. You know, The things he would say, you would just never think of saying, but you would think like that, like, yeah, that's an unusual looking backdrop, but he would say, look at that. He'd say, it should be on my table, he said. You know, his service was everything. Doing his service was everything. And we know with 25, 30 years, his cooking for the deities was known around the world. It wasn't just something appreciated here in Vrindavan, because this is an international center. And everyone would come. They would pay to get that Mahaprasadam, that box of Rajbhog Prasadam, and distribute it to others, have it for themselves. His cooking deities appreciated what he cooked. It was with such sincerity, with such care. And all you cooks should take note of that. He set a standard, a very high standard in the kitchen in pleasing their lordships. And to continue that would be a very nice service to Boo as well as Srimati Radharani. And of course, over the last year, Panchagoda and I, we would visit him. In the last few months, not so much. You know, Boo is, several words we have for Boo. He was unique, but we would sit there and he could be as ornery as he wanted, and we would talk to him. Early on, we were saying, what do you need, Boo? I'm in Maya. That's it. I'm in Maya. I'm in Maya. He'd say, throw me in the Jamuna. Drop me off the Gurukula building. I'm in Maya. It took me a long time to understand his Maya. He was so upset that he couldn't continue in his service. This is devotee. That was it. He couldn't do his service for whatever reasons. His service wasn't getting done, and he just wanted to leave. Certainly not Maya. He wanted to continue with his service, and I'm sure. I read a little thing from Giriraj Maharaj. He said he asked his deities. He said in praying to his deities, he said he got serious confirmation from his deities that Boo went back to Godhead. You know, and I see often when devotees die, everyone will say they went back to Godhead. Prabhupada didn't say that. Very rare. You didn't hear Prabhupada, he would say if they remembered Krishna, they went back to Godhead. It wasn't an assumption just because you were in ISKCON in some temple you died, you went back to Godhead. Prabhupada always spoke very philosophically. But it was just from my own feelings. Boo went back to Godhead. He was already back to Godhead while he was here. To be with him was always a delight. And I'm, like our other God brothers, really going to miss him. He was part of Vrindavan. He was very much part of this temple. You know, I've always come and gone over the years. I hope to become, after 50 years, part of this Vrindavan community. But he was a pillar here in Vrindavan, and he'll always be remembered. And like we say, we have many, many people to speak, so I'll stop here. But we all owe very much to Bhubaneswara. I was very happy to have some time to spend with him over this last year, and we'll miss him very much. Jai Bhuveshwar Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
So we'd like to thank Smrti Kirti for sharing his wonderful experiences and reminding us that Boo was a pillar of this Vrindavan temple. Next I have offering from Niranjan Swami. Rarely would I make a trip to Vrindavan without visiting my dear godbrother Bhuvaneswara Prabhu. I knew him from the time when I was temple president in Boston in late 70s. He was Sri Sri Radha Gopi Ballava's cook, and he was a great cook at that. Anyone who knows Boo, as he was affectionately known to so many, knows that he loved his service of cooking for Sri Sri Radha Shyam Sundar. That service was his life and soul, and he faithfully rendered that service for many decades. Whenever I would visit Bhuvaneswara Prabhu in his room, if he heard I was there at the temple taking darshan, also planning to visit him, Bhuvaneswara Prabhu would also arrange to have a small plate, sometimes not so small, of Mahaprasad waiting for me in his room from the lunch offering he cooked that day. We'd then sit and talk for a while about Braj. He'd ask me about my preaching. We would embrace, and then I would be on my way. He would always ask me when I would be coming back again. This picture was the last time we were together, during my last visit to Vrindavan a few years ago. As I was getting ready to leave, Boo had in his pocket a huge Mahasweet, which must have been from Shamsundar's plate that day. It was probably passed down through Radharani, and he was in just the right place to receive it. I guess he sent a picture along with this offering. In this picture, he was waiting for the right time to put the Mahasweet into my hand as I walked out the gate. The sweet came along with his usual boo smile, which I'll miss terribly. I seem to remember that as soon as the sweet was put in my hand, though, there was another line of devotees waiting to get as much remnants as I was willing to give. Needless to say, although it was a huge sweet, it all went pretty fast. There's no way I can think of Boo separate from Srimati Radharani. I have no doubt that he will be making his next prep right there alongside her. Bhuvaneswara Prabhu ki jai. So next I'd like to ask Gopal Prabhu to please make his offering.
Shriman Bhuvaneswara Prabhu ki jai. At this time, thinking back from the beginning of ISKCON, when it started, we had no vision of having days like today where we would be glorifying the departure of our God brothers, God sisters, or even Srila Prabhupada for that point. I was told that Bhuvaneswara joined ISKCON in Chicago Temple. Yes? Yes. So if I've done anything good, it's that I started Chicago Temple, and Bhuvaneswara was one of the persons that came, flourished, and dedicated his life to serving Srila Prabhupada. Just like Panchagoda Prabhu in 93, when he came to Vrindavan, I also came, and my service was to help Bhuvaneswara. So he would cook Rajbhog, and I would cook the morning prasadam, kitri, halava, whatever other preparations, and I would also cook the evening arti prasadam. And he was very strict in how he wanted the food cooked. He says, you must use this pressure cooker, you must do this, you must do that, you must do this. And For me, I wanted to, you know, experiment because I never used a pressure cooker. I always start everything from scratch, and I would cook like that. And so, but he would be eyeballing you, watching you, to make sure that you followed his instructions. Only on some occasions I was able to sneak by him and cook my way and offer the prasadam to the deities. But we know that Bhuvanesvara had a unique personality, and many of you have said that he had a grumpy side, but it was just a facade. He was actually very tender and soft and kind-hearted and a lovable person. He would not communicate, at least openly, too much or socialize, which is good because it didn't allow him to engage in prajapal. But I would get, you know, he didn't have a smartphone. He had one of the old style phones, a little one like that. And always I would get some text messages. Tomorrow's Ekadasi. Don't forget. And then he says, I have to give class today. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And then, you know, he wants me to answer him, give him some encouragement. And I always told him, he says, you don't have to worry. You know, you're going to be speaking about Prabhupada. You're going to be speaking about Krishna. So whatever you say will be perfect. So the last days of Bhuvaneswara's presence here, it was very difficult for all of us, I think we will say, to see him deteriorating away and becoming more recluse. And even the passing is a joyous occasion. For me, it was a very sad time, even to see pictures of Bhuvaneswara or go to visit him. I couldn't do it because you remember him like he is here, a vibrant, dedicated devotee to Srila Prabhupada. But his reward for his years of service, as some of you have already said, most definitely he's gone back to Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Bhuvaneswara Prabhu ki! So we'd like to thank Gopal for sharing his memories of Bhuvaneswara Prabhu, especially everyone's remembering his wry sense of humor. Next we have a letter from His Holiness Bhakti Rasamrita Swami. As gradually senior devotees are leaving this physical plane, I am reminded more and more of how precious the association of such devotees is and how sublime their qualities are. It's hard to imagine Sri Sri Krishna Balaram Mandir without Bhuvaneswara Prabhu. He was such a regular daily presence, year after year, decade after decade, that I rarely recall instances when he was not in the temple. It is perhaps only in the last year or two that he may have not been so visible due to failing health. It is also rare to see devotees doing the same service steadily for so many years at a stretch with enthusiasm and so meticulously with so much care and devotion. Being the main cook for the deities, he represented Srimati Radharani's department. How many times would he offer me Mahaprasadam, not just when I served in Vrindavan, but also during my visits, many, many other devotees had the same experience. He was a man of few words. In my experience, he only spoke of what he had read in Srila Prabhupada's books or heard during class that day, or perhaps occasionally about his service. I have never heard him indulging in prajalpa, criticizing devotees, or wasting time. He would be in the temple attending kirtan or class, or doing service, or in his room reading and chanting. He would go up to devotees with some transcendental message or instruction. I have many fond memories of partaking prasadam and discussing Krishna Katha with him in his room. I also remember that for many years, he would send text messages on every Ekadasi and on festival days, glorifying that day and reminding everyone to fast, chant more, etc. I will miss our dear Bhuvaneswara Prabhu. We have lost a precious jewel from our midst. I am sure he is cooking for their lordships. Sri Bhuvaneswara Prabhu ki! So next, with the permission of the Vaishnavas, I'll offer my remembrances of Bhu. Panchakalpatrubhyascha kripasindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So, my first remembrance of Bhuvaneswar was sometime in '72. I served in New Dwarka Temple in the kitchen. I was making chapatis. Actually, I was cooking. Somebody else was rolling them. I was cooking them. And one day, I saw this devotee, he looked very sad. And I said, Prabhu, what's the matter? And he just read a purport in one of Prabhupada's books where Prabhupada said, if one is fat, it is very difficult to make spiritual advancement. So we all know from the beginning, Boo was always a little bit chubby. So he was very depressed. That was my first meeting of Bhuvaneswara in 1972. And I remember he used to work he did service in the kitchen department there also. Then he left for, I guess, for Radha Damodar Party and later so many other services he did. Then I joined Vrindavan Temple in 1984. Somewhere around 1986, I hadn't seen Bhuvaneswara since then, since that time in LA. And he showed up in Vrindavan Temple. And first he was given the service of taking care of the BBT book go down and Sankirtan party. And finally of course we all know he got his service cooking in the kitchen. And the last few years I've been very fortunate because Bhuvaneswara was just my next door neighbor actually. So he was constantly coming over to just drop in with some dry comment or some. He especially liked to come and rob my refrigerator, especially like kiwis. In fact, when he first, this time was made his determination to leave, I brought over kiwis, trying to cheer him up, joke with him. And he was so simple devotee. The first devotee I saw, no computer, and like Prabhuji said, his phone was just a little ordinary phone. Somehow at the very end, he asked Arjun Prabhu for my number. Then I would get those funny little messages, text messages. Just like when we got a washing machine, he texted me, he said, "Can I wash my heart?" And he would always make these, just like I think it was Shruti Kirti said about the backdrop. There was one backdrop, I remember Bhuvat Mangalarji came up to me and said, "This is the bedspread backdrop. Then there's one devotee who leads a very unique Mangalarti. And Boo came up to me and said, "This is a Louis Armstrong Mangalarti." And somehow or other, he really liked bananas. And somehow my Ayurvedic doctors told me not to take bananas, so I don't have them very often. But somehow, sometimes devotees would drop off bananas. And he had a radar. I don't know how. Every time somebody dropped off bananas, and Boo would come to steal them. And he, every once in a while, that I knew I got in Radhesham's mercy, he would bring a Maha sweet. And for all the years that I lived next door, it was always the very same sweet. I thought sometimes he was going to bring me a Ras Malai or something, really incredible sweet. But he always brought this, I guess it was some type of burfi with ground up peanuts in it. That's the only sweet Maha sweet he ever brought for me. But he was so steady in that service. It was, as everybody mentions, it was just, especially cooking is one of those heavy services. But for so many years he did this service, and only at the end he couldn't do it. Then he became very depressed and finally decided to leave this world because he couldn't do his service. But what else was there? All right, we'll keep it short. But unfortunately, I never kept all of those text messages. But fortunately, I have an offering from Basa Ghosh Prabhu. So I might as well, since I'm mentioning, I might as well make that offering. Basa Ghosh kept all his text messages. Bhuvanesvara Prabhu ki. It's amazing, although he had when you hear Basa Ghosh's text messages, it's amazing. He had no computer, he had no smartphone, he had nothing, but he was aware of everything that's going on. He listened to this. Remembering Bhuvanesvara Prabhu, very short essay by Basa Ghosh. Not sure how I can properly glorify our dear departed Bhuvanesvara Prabhu. Now that he has left our association, I can only lament that my relationship wasn't closer than it was. Because I was an occasional visitor to Vrindavan over the years, and well, he had become a Brajavasi, residing at Holy Dham Vrindavan for 35 years. There were some breaks from Vrindavan during that long period, but they were few and far between. It's a fact that during my Vrindavan visits, I would not spend much time with him, although I did visit him in his room now and then. What I do have is a record of text messages he sent me over the past few years on my smartphone. Now I see that record of messages is saved. Most of it saved on my old phone, but I still have the recent ones. Sunday, April 19th, 2019. Appearance, Lord Ram, green as grass. Wednesday, February 4th, 2020. Ekadasi, fasting to noon for braha. No beans, no grains, or bat soup. He knew what was going on. April 3rd, 2020. When will shutdown be over? Jai Radhe. April 21st. No shortage, no visitors, no bhav, no travel, no cricket. May 5th, 2020. Lord Nishringadev appearance. Fasting till dusk, not day or night. Pray to do bhajan. May 7th, no end to this crisis. May 8th, I sent him a verse from Bhagavad Gita. I meant to send 13.9, but I sent him to look at 16.9. And he immediately caught the mistake. 16.9, no mention of disease. May 14th, devotees can't get virus. Whose name? Not me. May 17th, any change in lockdown status? UP, All India? May 18th, Happy Aparakadasi. Devotional service can never be stopped, any place or any time. June 3rd, riots in USA. Danger every step. June 6th, no nothing this year due to lockdown. Jai Radhe. June 15th, have we attained the Brahman platform? June 16th, time to renounce all attachments, take sannyas. I guess he's talking to Basagosh. Happy Yogini Ekadasi, no mundane talk. Lord Chaitanya to Raghunath Das Goswami. June 17th, Trump going to war with China? Virus not enough? More suffering for all? June 20th, Puri Rath Yatra is on? 22nd. What percent dying? Why so much precaution? Jai Radhe. July 4th, all glories to Bhakti Charu Swami. July 5th, so where is his body? July 8th, what about Maharaj leaving body America? July 15th, Happy Kamika Kadasi, no mundane talks. August 8th, no end of the pandemic, still on today. August 11th, Happy Quiet Janmashtami, Jai Radhe. August 12th, Srila Prabhupada app, today he was a Vaikuntha man. August 18th, fill your lips with Harinam, happiness or distress, says Sri Bhakti Vinod, Sri Nam. Just after I left for the USA on 23rd, and since Bhuvaneswara was no high tech, he didn't use WhatsApp or Facebook, we fell out of touch. So I will miss him. We were friends, even if not the closest of friends, but this is a type of correspondence went back longer than I have records for, so it's lost and hard to recoup. He is leaving this world. Certainly we have faith he has now joined Krishna's eternal Leela in Golok. His life was glorious as a sadhak, sevak, and brajvasi. What more can I say? He reasons ill who tells that Vaishnavas die when thou art living still in sound. The Vaishnavas die to live, and living try to spread the holy name around. I have a couple more memories I just remember when Boo was in the BBT department. But only those people from America who are probably in my age group will understand this. But Boo used to do an impersonation when we were fooling around. He would do an impersonation of Ed Sullivan. It's going to be a really big show. It's a really big show tonight. You know, his face looked exactly. He could make that face. And then Boo was curved a little bit, almost like Kirtananda Swami. So he used to do a Kirtananda Swami imitation also. Anyway, we'll miss Boo. Bhuvaneswara Prabhu ki. Next, we'd like to request His Holiness B.A. Janardhan Swami to make his offering.
Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kipasindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. First of all, I would like to relate to you the offerings of my Guru Maharaj. He says that Bhuvaneswara Prabhu is a great devotee. He's a sadhu. And he says he went back home, back to Godhead. There's another devotee who comes like almost every year, has been here also for a while because of the lockdown. His name is Sastra Prabhu. is one of our main donors also, especially Lord Nityananda's appearance day, feast, and so on. You ready? Read it? Okay, it's quite long. Most of them are also repeated, but Bhuvaneswara Prabhu and Shastra Prabhu, they're good friends, very good friends. He says, I cannot imagine Vrindavan and my visiting Krishna Balaram Mandir without the precious association of my dear friend and mentor, Bhuvaneswara Prabhu. For the past 10 years or more, whether my stay was for a few months or longer here at Krishna Balaram Mandir, I would spend every night with Bhuvaneswara Prabhu reading Prabhupada's books together in his room. Bhuvaneswara's demeanor was always no nonsense. He was not interested in speaking or hearing prajalpa. His nature was he always seemed grave. Therefore, a smile or a laugh from Bhuvaneswara was to be treasured. Despite his manners, Bhuvaneswara's heart was very loving. Underneath, he had a very caring nature. When I was in the United States, Bhuvaneswara always kept track of me. He would text me for Ekadasi and holidays, and I could always count on Bhuvaneswara for the occasional sovereign calls from Vrindavan. And without fail, a couple of months before my next visit to Vrindavan, I would receive my Bhuvaneswara's text or request, items he wanted me to bring for Krishna Balaram. I always took Bhuvaneswara's request as a special mercy, my entrance fee to the Holy Dham. The first and foremost request was always saffron for the kitchen. Ever since I met Bhuvaneswara, he always had his stash of saffron in his closet. Bhu was well known for this saffron stash. For me, Bhuvaneswara would also ask for pecans so that the deities could be offered a rare pecan burfi. Bhu would ask for carob for baking cakes, etc. I was also to bring new aprons and big lighters, just to name a few. But my biggest challenge was the extra long pins to be used in the dressing of the deities. This could be a challenging quest. I often needed to try various stores, but I never wanted to disappoint Bhu. How lucky that Bhuvaneswara chose me to bring these items. This made me feel like my personal special mercy, but I would later find out that Bhuvaneswara would make this request to many other visiting devotees. Still for me, this was my own Bhuvaneswara special mercy. I will always remember with love and transcendental idiosyncrasies of Bhuvaneswara. His simplistic kirtan melodies that were usually out of tune. This was especially noticeable when he was leading the 7 a.m. kirtan. I would fondly watch Bhuvaneswara signaling to the guests to stand up for his kirtan and the deities, just before the greeting of the deities. And yes, the guests would usually comply. Another idiosyncrasy I will remember with special fondness is Bhuvaneswara wearing his huge, heavy winter jacket and gloves all the time, especially in front of the deities. It did not have to be very cold, as many of us were only wearing sweaters. Comical perhaps, but to my eyes, a total treasure as he stood reverent-like in front of the deities. I considered that this COVID would be just a hiccup setback, finding myself isolated from Vrindavan just temporarily. But losing Bhubaneswar is a great blow. I did not realize that Bhubaneswar had become so depressed. COVID was difficult for many devotees, especially with the Krishna Balaram temple being in lockdown. But when I left in August, I never expected such a dire situation to continue for so long, especially for us visiting devotees. Finally, I would like to share one story of mine with Bhubaneswar for the pleasure of the devotees. The only days that Bhubaneswar would not cook were Ekadasi, and on that day, Bhubaneswar and I would go to Radha Damodar temple and do parikrama of the temple. Bhubaneswar Prabhu, heavy nature on these Ekadasi days, was such that I was not supposed to speak even during the Tum trip. Also, Bhubaneswar displayed an extremely serious whenever he would enter into Prabhupada's room in Radha Damodar temple. Personally, on other occasions, I frequently visited the Radha Damodar temple when I was staying in Vrindavan. I would always like to give a donation to the pujaris of the temple. Thus, the pujaris would actually recognize me and mercifully offer me maha garlands and maha prasad. But when for the first time, Bhubaneswar Prabhu saw me give a donation to the pujaris, Bhubaneswar was outraged with me, taken back. Bhu scolded me severely. Didn't you know that we were involved in a lawsuit with the Radha Damodar temple? Bhubaneswar totally disapproved. From then on, I would have to be discreet if I wanted to make a donation to the pujaris of Sri Radha Damodar temple. I imagine Bhubaneswar still knew, but he never confronted me again. My donation was to the deities. Let me close my offering the eloquent words of a respectful devotee. Bhubaneswar's cooking style was unique, and I always knew when I was taking Krishna Balaram Mandir's Mahaprasadam, because the special taste of the various preparations had not changed at all over the years, just like the Mahaprasadam in Jagannath Puri. Bhubaneswar Prabhu, okay? It always has the same wonderful and unique flavor. This was the amazing nature of Bhubaneswar's consistent service for 25 years. Hare Krishna, I will always love you so much. Your servant, Sastra Das. So, as for myself, I believe I met Bhubaneswar Prabhu in Chicago temple, Sri Radha Kishori. That was around 86. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's centennial, or 500 years. And somehow, just recently also, we have one of our devotees who's very, very dear in Sridham Mayapur, who left his body, His Grace Pankajangri Prabhu. And his service there also, very, very amazing, very dedicated to their Lord, to the Lordships, Prahlad Nisinghadev. And by no means, I would say our Bhubaneswar Prabhu is no less than Pankajangri Prabhu. Pankajangri Prabhu is dear to Lord Nisinghadev. Our Bhubaneswar Prabhu is dear to Radhe Shyam, Krishna Balaram, Gaurnitai, Srila Prabhupada. Because the service is absolute. Yes, whenever I go to see into his room, I will read. And whenever I give class also, either Bhagavad Gita class or Srimad Bhagavatam, he will make comment, sometimes correcting me as well. because he knew Prabhupada's books inside and out. And then, therefore, sometimes he wanted to clarify some things, and then I will tell him, yes, this is what I've read, and then he will agree. And every Jayananda Prabhu's disappearance day, he would prepare the best peanut butter halava. We will always wait for him. He will give a big or a small container, not that big, because only those who came for the class, and usually Dinabandhu Prabhu will give the class on Jayananda Prabhu's disappearance day. He will handle them to me, and then I will give them to those who came for the class. One of the outstanding qualities of Bhubaneswar Prabhu is sarala, simplicity. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that this is the foremost quality that we should develop in Krishna consciousness. Simplicity, sarala, or in the Bhagavad Gita, one of the qualities of the Brahmana, arjavam, honesty. He's very truthful, like a child, simple. He accepts things and he says things when, supposed to be mentioned. Also, of course, he's paka, super paka in sadhana. He's always here for morning program, Mangalartik, and sometimes also he would give class, but then because he needs to be in the deity kitchen to cook and prepare for Raj Bhoga, no questions. No questions, no comments, immediately. Sometimes also, the kirtan leader, he will make some comment, usually near Radhesham, he'll say, who's leading kirtan? It's very flat. It's very flat. What else can I say? Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur also, he would choose one of his disciples to lead kirtan who seems to be like out of tune or not very melodious. A bull may not be like right there up to the note, but he is very sincere. He's so pure in his kirtan that the 24-hour kirtan department, they love his kirtan. Is that correct? Thank you, Akinchana Prabhu. And when I saw the last rites, those who were around him, who's carrying the palanquins, mostly they're 24-hour kirtan devotees. This is how dear Bhuvaneswar to the kirtaniyas. So, yes, that's as much as I can say. And we really will greatly be missing Bhuvaneswar Prabhu. He may not be that really popular all over the world, but for the devotees who comes to Krishna Balaram Mandir, he's very well known. Hare Krishna. Bhuvaneswar Prabhu ki! Srila Prabhupada ki!
So we'd like to thank Janardhan Maharaj for his wonderful memories of Bhuvaneswar Prabhu, especially about his, because we haven't glorified his classes so much. Bhuvaneswar Prabhu's classes were always just like old days, straight from Prabhupada's book, straight, nothing fancy, nothing new, but just straight on Prabhupada from old days. So anyway, next I'd like to request His Grace Sanatana Prabhu to make his offering to Bhuvaneswar.
Hare Krishna. So, His Grace Bhuvaneswara Prabhu ki jai. I joined actually in Vrindavan. I was staying upstairs in the New Bhakta Ashram. And I had a very small service in Prabhupada's garden but I couldn't tolerate because the monkeys were there. There was no net. One day the monkeys attacked me and I told the management I cannot go back in this garden. Then I was a little bit in the kitchen making chapatis on this big, they had a very big plate and that was too hot. And then the next service was with Bhuvanesvara Prabhu in the BBT. And we immediately made friendship. He was very friendly and he asked me to buy him a gas bottle. I bought him a gas bottle. Then out of gratitude for the gas bottle, he would also cook for me. He always was having this boiled sabji. He had a hard time with the spicy things. And like that was going on. And I was sick a lot. And so somewhere he read in Prabhupada's books a special recipe of making a devotee healthy. He read that a Vaishnava should take a big water in his mouth and rinse it forward and backward many times and spit it over the face of the sick person. So from morning on, Boo was very excited. He said, I read something and the afternoon will come and I will make you healthy. So I was very wondering what will come, and he brought me on the veranda. He was staying actually with Manidi Swami and Radha Govinda Maharaj. Now Radhaman Maharaj is in that room, I think. Obviously he had, I think, one sannyas tanda was standing, Manidi. So he called me to his room, he put me on the veranda, he told me at the side of the veranda, you hold your head like that. Then he swallowed the water and I was already wondering and whoosh, he spit it all over my face. So I got the full mercy. I wasn't offended, but I was a bit surprised. But he shown me in the book where he read it, that's where it come from, it is authorized. So then I went on Padayatra and same like most of the devotees experience when I was coming back from Padayatra, at least 2-3 times a year I used to come for visa, we used to come for Raj Mandal or something. And sometimes I had to fix a cinema projector in Delhi, so I would stop over in Vrindavan. So I come to his room and he would give Mahaprasadam and he always make you sit down and read. Then when I got married, until quite some years he would always say, you got married, you know. It was like an offense to him that I got married. And then I had another very special experience. One day I came to Mumbai. I was building the temple in Pandharpur. I would always come to Mumbai. I had my donor members there, and I had that small Premier Padmini car, blue one. And I was going around, and somebody told me, hey, Bhuvanesvara is in the room. I was totally surprised how that is possible. He's never leaving Vrindavan. So I went in his room, and that was, he had broken his leg. And he kind of had recovered from that, but he was a bit depressed. And the doctor had told him, some doctor he overheard, he said something, Sunya. And he was saying, I'm zero, I'm this, I'm finished, I can't do. So me being fired up, I first took him, he was not ready to come out of the room anymore. And all the servants who had come, there was Hindi speaking, he had fried them out. So I took him and first out of the room, you know, in Jews they have those balcony and the elevator. I first took him out on the balcony. From the balcony we were seeing the deities. And then the next day we went a step further. I got him into the elevator. We went down to the reception area. And then the next day I took him out backside. They had those flats in Mumbai. I took him around the flats. So after 3-4 days, my visit was finished, and I was supposed to go back to Pandharpur. So once a sudden, Bhima gave me a ring. He said, Bhuvanesvara wants to come with you to Pandharpur. I said, okay, whatever you say, Bhima, what is your opinion? He said, yeah, please take him to Pandharpur, and when the winter is finished, don't send him back to Vrindavan. In the winter, it's cold there. Let him recover in the winter, and in the springtime, you take him back. So then he came in my Padmini car with me to Pandharpur. And I can't exactly, my time sense is not good. So the winter, it must have been 3-4 months he was in Pandharpur. The first 1 week he was perfect. He was helping with the deities and this and that. But then again, he got a little bit in the bad mood. My wife was cooking for him every day. And I was thinking he's eating. And after 2-3 weeks, one day we found out outside of his window there was a balcony. At the corner of the balcony, we seen all the food. So he actually started that time also, he would hardly eat anything. And then came the time to take him back to Vrindavan. He had that thing, I'm a demon, I cannot go back to Vrindavan. Anyhow, with great difficulty, I got him in the car, I got him to Solapur, and then again from the Solapur temple next day I had to get him in the train. And I thought, we're sitting in the train, my wife was there, and Bhuvaneshwar and myself. I finally was, okay, now the biggest difficulty, and Bhuvaneshwar was laughing. I was thinking, what's going on, Bhu? He said, I cheated you. I said, what you done? He said, look at my luggage, nothing inside. He left everything under the bed and put a blanket in his bag. Then we reached in Mathura station, and that time we had that old sumo car. And we hardly came out from the station, Pam, the tire blew. And Boo was enlightened. He said, see, I'm a demon. I cannot go back to Vrindavan, you know. And yeah, finally we brought him back. And then Sankirtan also was there. And then he got some medicine and he totally recovered after some time. And for quite some, at least 1-2 years, I was his anxiety reliever always. Whenever he gets an anxiety, his visa is finished, something is happening, he would ring me. And then once we had the office here, then he used to come to the office every day. And he was making those jokes. And just this morning when I was leaving, I had to go bathroom and was putting on tea, like my daughter was there. And my wife was saying, yeah, Boo was always singing at 7 o'clock. And my daughter was exactly singing the same tune with all the imperfections. You see how the kids, she was hearing that since childhood on, she was hearing Bhuvaneshwar singing. She could sing the Hare Krishna. I can't, I'm not a good singer. She, with all the imperfections, so very sweet Boo. And he was giving the classes also always. And sometimes, I don't want to mention names, he had one particular devotee, he didn't like his singing. He would always say, now we cut a tape and we sell it. Or as some was saying, sometimes the structure of the backdrop or the dress, something was looking funny. He would say, hey, look, what is that? You know? So anyhow, I'm also fully sure that Bhuvaneshwar returned back to Godhead. He didn't have any attachment. He didn't even know where his family was, what was there. He didn't have any material, and he would always talk about Krishna. When you go in his room, he wouldn't, sometimes a little bit he pick or make a joke. When you know him well, it is actually really funny. But he never anyway had shown any much material attachment. He really he didn't like Matajis. Even my wife had cooked for him for quite some time, but he always felt Mataji should not come his room, Mataji should not come near. That disturbed his mind, and Mataji's are Maya. So, but then one time, in the very beginning, we were upstairs in the Brahmachari building, and I forgot that Mataji from Mumbai, in white, she was secretary there. She also left her body, was staying in room number... Aditya was walking, and Boo once a sudden said, oh, look, the manjaris are moving. And very sincerely, I was thinking, oh, this is a very change in Boo's mind. So anyhow, I don't want to take up too much time. I had a very close relationship with Bhuvaneshwar, and I have to admit, at the later stages, I went only once in his room, and he did talk to me. So devotee is saying he's not talking. He was talking. And he was giving, for everything, his answer was no. And then I was thinking I will trick him and make an answer where no means yes, but still he immediately caught me and said yes. So afterwards, I kind of, at the end, I didn't want to really see that situation. I rather want to, as somebody said before, remember him as he was. Jai. His Grace Bhuvaneshwar Prabhu ki jai, Vrindavan Dham ki jai.
So we'd like to thank Sanak Sanatana Prabhu for some very wonderful memories of Bhuvaneshwar Prabhu. Next, we'd like to request Sukadev Maharaj to please make his offering for Bhuvaneshwar Prabhu.
Bhuvaneshwar Prabhu ki. Morning after the Mangalarti, Dharmatma Prabhu came to me, do you have any association with Bhuvaneshwar Prabhu? So today in the morning after Mangalarti, Dharmatma Prabhu came to me and said, today is a memorial Sabha for Bhuvanesvara Prabhu. Do you have any association of him? Yeah, some time back, many years ago, I came late hours of the night and I wanted a place to stay in the night. And my assistant was Radha Govind Maharaj's disciple. So he took me to Radha Govind Maharaj, and Bhuvaneswara Prabhu was in his room. Yeah, Maharaj can stay here. So Bhuvaneswara Prabhu. So I stayed in the night, and that was the beginning. And then I came to know that he was a Prabhupada disciple. And after that, occasionally whenever I was coming to Vrindavan, he will be there in the Mangalarti standing there. And he'll ask, how are you, Maharaj? And then he'll ask me, go in the front. His graciousness. And also, the time when I stayed in the room in the morning, he called me. And some of you have said, Mahaprasadam. And then next time, when he saw me sometime, do you have a place to stay? Yes. So I was surprised at that, that you could take some interest in me like that, although I'm like a stranger to him. So I was thinking, morning when Dharmatma Prabhu suggested, like Prabhupada said, the people who have become devotees with foreign bodies, they are part of Gauranga Mahaprabhu's pastimes. They were devotees who were given a body in the West, and so is Bhuvaneswara Prabhu. And I also remember Prabhupada saying when devotees were staying in Vrindavan, and they were not doing any service, or it was a little disturbance, and Prabhupada said, we don't mind people coming here and staying in Vrindavan, but at least if they can participate in the kirtan, we don't mind giving them a place in prasadam. They should do it. So that way, Bhuvaneswara Prabhu, not only that he stayed in Vrindavan, and he had the great, grand opportunity to be serving as a cook. As we all know, it is not a job everyone comes forward to do. We have to ask, you want to cook? At least in South India, in our temples, to send somebody into the kitchen, it's good to persuade him. Because you have to do things on time, and you have to do it really clean, and you have to do it like Rajbhog and things like that, elaborate. So if somebody volunteers to do it, that means he is really a close person to the Srila Prabhupada's movement. People who are cooking in the, So I hope I take inspiration from him, and I try to improve my devotional service. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Bhuvaneswara Prabhu ki.
We'd like to thank Sukadev Maharaj for his memories of Bhuvaneswara. Next, we'd like to ask His Holiness Radharaman Swami to please make his offering.
Hare Krishna. So, today we are celebrating the glorification day of HGBhuvanesvara Prabhu. I will try first of all, I will try my best to be as brief as possible. We are getting late also. So, in Srimad Bhagavatam, Hare Krishna, Hare Bol. In Srimad Bhagavatam, Hare Krishna, in Srimad Bhagavatam it is described that a person who has cultivated Krishna consciousness substantially, all good, sublime qualities, they take shelter in personality of that devotee. Many unlimited qualities. So here, try to remember, memorize some of qualities in the personality of Bhuvaneswara Prabhu. It was visible. Some quality is hidden inside, but some quality were really, it was visible in his personality. And one thing before that, though by the influence of powerful time factor, he left his body, Kalevar, few days ago, but he has left with us. Type it is considered to be legacy from Bhuvaneswara Prabhu, widespread reputation, at least in ISKCON world, as a pure devotee of Krishna. This legacy. And legacy of serving mood. This legacy is still we have. He served continuously here in Vrindavan before he was doing 35 years. Also, he was like a manifestation of innocency. Innocent, then it was not hidden, manifestation. Innocence and type of, he was a liberated personality. While in this life, Bhagavatam describes Jivan Mukta. Not that few days ago he entered in the kingdom of Krishna, kingdom of God, become liberated. But Jivan Mukta, while he was in this life, that same, the body, he was completely Jivan Mukta personality. And the simplicity, one of his qualities that in Vedic Granth described that a devotee should be like his Bhakti's Ajat Satru. Ajat Satru means enemy. The person, an enemy has so far an enemy has not taken birth in the earthly planet. So he was such a personality. Of course, in his mind, no was enemy for him, and even nobody has cultivated enmity against him. He was very dear, loving devotee. And one quality in Sukha, Kapil Dev described, there are many qualities of pure devotee. I will talk few of them. One is Mit Bhuk, Muni. You must have in third canto described the good quality, sublime characteristics of devotee. The one is Mit Bhuk. Mint means little, small quantity. Bhuk means one who eats a little.
size of, what to say, size of food or quantity of food. Since here, a devotee, when we serve in DT department, and especially if in the kitchen, DT, we think that it is our service right, our birthright to take prasadam sumptuously, even on risk of getting overweight. But Bhuvaneswar was the myth book, I'm talking myth book. He was eating very little, quantity-wise, size-wise. You must have noticed this, and of course, towards the last day, it is like Parikshit Maharaj, fasting until death. Very little thing or practice did not eat. And with Muni, Muni means mananshil, one who contemplates always in his mind about the qualities, about the service of Krishna. The person only, Muni, means the person always who is contemplating, thinking how he can increase his service towards Krishna. So that sense, but one meaning of Muni is one who is mauन, mauन is silence. So I don't remember some of previous he talked about no question of any mundane talk, gossiping. Every word he was speaking, it seems that क्या कहते हैं नाप तौल कर, weighed. Before it appears that when he was speaking, before that uttering the words, he has taken the weight of that word. And this was very visible whenever he gave classes, Bhagavatam classes. Every single word, our whole incident, it appears that he has, क्या कहते हैं English में, तौल कर, not more, not less, weighed. So Muni, mananshil, and always he was engaged in the thinking how to increase my service, his service, how to increase the service in the lotus feet of Krishna. So much so that we have seen his practical behavior. He did not act, he did not behave throughout his seva kal, seva service time, out of jurisdiction of devotional service, out of jurisdiction of bhakti. Like a fish, always, any aquatics, especially fish, always it resides within the water. A fish never aspires, never develop desire to come out from the water. Always she prefer to remain. So same way, Bhuvaneswar Prabhu conscious, mental situation, consciousness, and his activity is never came out of jurisdiction of pure devotional service. That is also visible. A fish is like a fish, she wants to live only in water, not out of water. If someone by force take out, voluntarily a fish wants to come out of water. But if someone by force take it out from the water, he doesn't it doesn't feel comfortable, start flapping. So no question of her, Bhuvaneswar Prabhu, no question about it. Always, all his activities, all his flow of consciousness that was within the jurisdiction of pure devotional service. Never ever he strayed, came out from the, never away from the path of devotional service, never ever away from the direction of devotional service. So this makes it really asset with us, his legacy of purity, innocent. And one thing, one quality, I think Sanatan Prabhu mentioned very briefly that quality about akinchan. Akinchan means theoretically the person who doesn't claim proprietorship for anything. This is one broad way. But one literary meaning of akinchan means he has nothing in his possession. I have fortune to associate with him when he was living in that particular room where now I am staying. So his assets, nothing was there, any unnecessary thing. But sometimes we have unnecessary means we use one pair of shoes, but sometimes we could two pair of shoes are there. But in his position, so nothing was that. In the real sense, he was akinchan. Theoretically, in broad sense, akinchan means the person who doesn't claim proprietorship materially, but not materially, even not spiritually, materially, there was nothing with him. One time, I was sitting, I was a guest, I was not residing in his room that time. My spiritual master, Radha Govinda, they were talking something. So Radha Govinda Maharaj asked, before coming here, everywhere is birth or where? This short, probably, if I remember, maybe Chicago. Radha Govinda Maharaj, so you have your parent there? So he told that, he doesn't know. At that time, he has no any clue whereabout of his parents. Absolutely, he was not knowing the phone. That time it was not serious, nobody was not having. He has no clue where they are existing. And then Maharaj said, whether they know that where are you going? No, may not. Completely detached, completely cut off from that association. The akinchan, no one is there, only Krishna, Balaram, of course, and other devotee as associate, as a friend of this temple, otherwise no connection at all. So real akinchan, self-led service, this is legacy, though by the powerful, by the influence of powerful time factor, Bhuvaneswara Prabhu is not with us. Apparently, he has entered in his eternal service, assisting Smrti Radharani or assisting Rohini Devi in the kitchen of Mother Yashoda. So he is there in permanent. But he has left really great, sublime, glorious legacy of service mood with us. And it is great symbol, it is great support for us. He has supported us in Krishna consciousness and he will continue to support us in cultivation of Krishna consciousness by his glorious legacy of service mood, legacy of simplicity, legacy of akinchan bhav. So I should be brief. Otherwise, I have listed many. Here I stop. Right.
Anyway, we'd like to thank His Holiness Radharaman Swami for reminding us some of the wonderful qualities of Bhuvaneswara Prabhu, especially his akinchan, having nothing. Next, we'd like to ask B.A. Vaishnav Maharaj to please make his offering.
Vanchakalpatarohyasya kripa sindhivaya vacha patitanang pavanabhyo vaishnavabhyo. Many devotees already expressed their memories about Bhuvaneswara Prabhu's. So I don't want to repeat all these things again. But one thing I want to say that the day he arrived in Vrindavan, I was also at the same time we came to Vrindavan. So for some time I was staying in the same room also. And for a few months or so, there also in guest house in that room also. He had a very serious desire to leave his body in Vrindavan from the day one. He came to Vrindavan to leave his body here. And that was his one of most fear and panic. Whenever his visa, something happens, he will go totally out of hand. His thinking, his everything will disturbed. And you didn't mention that taking the pills. I think you don't want that. Anyway, I don't want to say also. So he, even one or few times he started to leave his body even, because he was so depressed and so distressed. Why he can't leave his body in Vrindavan? Why he has to go out? So somehow or other, one time he was in a totally depressed condition, totally mad, not doing anything. And we have to forcibly take him to Agra, then to Delhi, somehow or other, again okay. And lastly, when he started again, he called me, why you are not coming to see me? I went, then says again the same thing coming, then we find out the doctor's contact, and Delhi, and but he said, no, this medicine is not working now. I told you, you don't have the visa, is a few years till you are here. No, it may complete, so I may have to go. So that makes him really down. And he, in that thinking, he left his service and bedridden, and he was trying to somehow or other leave his body in Vrindavan. And one, his god brothers, they are living, and he is becoming more and more serious. Even the day he left his body, few hours before I was there and was talking to the devotee who was serving him, that when they put him garland and they're calling devotees, so you can start kirtan because it's almost kidney fail and any moment he can leave his body. He can't speak, but still he was trying to tell that, no, I don't need kirtan. I'm not dying. But he was too much, I want to leave my body, I'm somehow not dying. Why you are making, it is not so easy for me to die in Vrindavan. But he made it in the same day. And for that reason, he was eating so little, and almost 5-6 days before his left body, he was not drinking even. Somehow or other, he taken vow that somehow or other, and his body, when he left his body, the photograph you see, it's almost bone and a white skin cover, that's it. Nothing was there. So bad shape. The doctors, they put catheter to take the urine. Nothing is inside, how, nothing, what will come? So that was situation. He was so keen to leave his body in Vrindavan. Somehow don't want to go here, and few years before, he made a will. I don't know, somewhere in temple, somewhere it is there. And you have it. He gave one copy to me. 3-4 copies, maybe 1 copy he gave to me, I don't know where I have kept. There also mentioned, please, I don't want that somebody should take me to big hospital or Delhi, someone, I want to somehow or other suffer and leave my body here. So that was one of his major project, and he achieved it. So somehow or other, we are missing him, but he will be ever in our memories, ever with us through his attitude, through his service, through his qualities. Sri Bhuvaneswara Prabhu ki.
So we'd like to thank His Holiness B.A. Vaishnava Maharaj for his wonderful memories of Bhuvaneswara, especially his huge will to leave his body here in Vrindavan. So is Prabodhananda Saraswati behind me? All right. We'd like to request His Holiness Prabodhananda Saraswati Maharaj to make his offering.
Vancha kalpatarubhasya kripa sindhubheva cha patitanang pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namah. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So we have already heard so many things about Bhuvaneswara Prabhu. Just like Radharamana Maharaj described him as Ajata Satru. You know, he is no enemy. Everyone likes him. And you have same thing like many have experienced when we are traveling. We have no need to see calendar. He always sends the message. Today, Ekadasi. But this is fasting, breaking time. Like this we get the message from him. And he was so simple, and his chanting a kirtan, not so melodious. Maybe it is not in raga or all these things, but chanting must be heard from the lips of a pure devotee. This is Prabhupada told. So his chanting is pure. Anyone heard his chanting, this is from heart. It's not just outward, because he is serving in dirty kitchen, he is cooking for Radharani. And this cooking, he is just like Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu. He was perfect in cooking, and Prabhupada also told his chanting is pure. Obviously, Bhuvaneswara Prabhu is same. He is just cooking, and his chanting is pure, so pure. You can feel. If someone he heard his chanting. So, they are truly in one line in dirty kitchen. Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu, he is also like Ajata Satru, he has no enemy. And Bhuvaneswara Prabhu also like this. He like that he has no enemy. Everyone likes him. And he is chanting holy name. And he is always meditating the Supreme Lord. And definitely he already reached Goloka Vrindavan, assisting Radharani in her kitchen. Hare Krishna. Srila Bhuvaneswara Prabhu ki jai.
So we'd like to thank His Holiness Prabodhananda Saraswati Maharaj for his wonderful memories of Bhuvaneswara. Next, we'd like to call on the one devotee that we're deeply indebted to. He got to, for the last more than a month, he's been serving directly Bhuvaneswara Prabhu in most very difficult service. We're all deeply indebted to him. Jaganivas Prabhu, please come and make your memories.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhuvya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. by the mercy and with his blessings of Sri Guru, His Holiness Bhaktidir Damodar Swami Maharaj, I was asked to stay in Vrindavan to serve Bhuvaneswara Prabhu since the month of December, when he came back from Delhi. My first meeting or realized Bhuvaneswara Prabhu who was, as many said, with his kirtan. At the beginning I was not able to understand why he was singing the same tune every day, in the morning and in the evening. It was just the same tune. And then I got so attached that once I recorded. I had the radio, so I recorded, and I got so attached to his chanting because, as Maharaj was saying, his chanting was coming from a pure heart. It doesn't matter the way he was chanting it. So it affected me in that way. Maybe that was 2015 while I was for 6 months here. Next time I have meetings with Bhuvaneswara Prabhu was while I was serving Gunagrahi Maharaj. Bhuvaneswara Prabhu will come every Ekadashi to meet Maharaj. He will bring Mahaprasadam and we'll discuss what he had heard that morning in the Bhagavatam, and Maharaj will ask some questions. And sometimes Maharaj was tired or a little bit in his mood, so he will ask me, today, please don't let him in. But there was no way to stop Bhuvaneswar. He was like, well, Prabhu, I'm sorry, today he will open the door, and Maharaj will like, oh, Boo, I'm so happy to see you. Many times, Gunagrahi Maharaj will ask the recipe for the peanut burfi or the halava that he prepared, but he keep it very tightly as a secret. He never revealed it. And he was very, as many have known him, he was very, externally very tough. I remember one time he was coming from, I don't remember the name, it was a devotee that was working in the Bhishma department. He was coming with him. So one time he said, next Ekadaji I won't come. This person here is going, he wants to see his mother. His mother is ill, so he wants to go and see. What is the need to go to see? Your mother is Radharani, is in Vrindavan. You don't need to go anywhere. So he was sometimes a little heavy, but he was meaning what he was saying, because I don't remember who said that he didn't have any connection with family. I will remember him as a Prabhupada old school disciples, those who left everything just to serve Prabhupada, and left. In those times, living everything was living the life that was known to them, family, whatever they were doing in their life. They just left. They left everything and they surrendered to what Prabhupada was saying to them, and they make it their life. So I will remember Prabhu for that. He cut his material relationships. At the same time, Bhuvaneswara Prabhu was very lovely and very, very mellow. He has a facade of a very hard and strong and moody, but he was very much like a child. Many of the manners, the way he will move in his day-to-day, he was like a child. One thing that I will always remember is the way he will take his Mahaprasad. He will always have one piece of burfi and one piece of sandwich. So he will just, he will pinch a little bit of the burfi, a little bit of the sandwich, and will put it in his mouth, and sometimes a little bit will stay in his hands. But the way he was relishing Mahaprasadam is something that will be one of my treasures while remembering him. Now, winding up all his story, I came to his life in his last part, and it was difficult for me to understand why he was so much into depression. He was so negative about everything. But I understood now that actually what he was, like someone said, that what he was meaning of, I'm in Maya, I'm a demon, was actually that he was not able to do his service. And sometimes he will have said to me, my mind has gone crazy. And I can now understand that why he was in such state of mind, because his way of being, and sometimes the body and the mind may play against us, so he was not able to do his service in the way he was doing it. He was very contemplative. He was a person of small or no words. I barely had long conversations with him, unfortunately. He was silent 99% of the day. He was just contemplative. So one day I read in a magazine that he had a dream, and in that dream devotees were bringing ghee. So he was very happy that there was such an amount of ghee that he was able to cover the whole month. And then suddenly someone woke him up, and it was in the middle of the Bhagavatam lecture. So after reading that, I will ask him almost for the last 5 months, like when I will go in the morning to see him, I will pay obeisances, which at the beginning he was like, no need for that, no, don't do that. But then he got used to. And I ask every time I will greet him, did you have any dream? And he was, no. So one thing is that a few days before he left, one day in the morning I came to him, I paid my obeisances, and he told me, last night I have a dream. I said, yes. I dreamed with Prabhupada. Yes, he was about to give Bhagavatam lecture, and he needed the shloka book. So I got it, I got my book, and I give it to him. That's it. Okay, that's very meaningful. I don't know. So, yeah. He was very gentle also, and he was very respectful. This may sound very not so meaningful, but for me it was very meaningful. Sometimes I was about to start chanting my Gayatri, or I was chanting my rounds, so he will have the urge to go to the bathroom. But until I finish my Gayatri or I finish with my round, and I will look at him because I realize he wants to go to the bathroom, but he will say nothing. He will just wait. And when I finish, he will look at me and I look at him, and I understood. You want to go to the bathroom? Yeah. He will never, even he's a senior, he will say, Prabhu, chant later, or stop what you're doing, I need to go to the bathroom, I need to pass water. He will wait for me that I will chant. So he was very respectful. The last week of April, he started to feeling not so well with his digestion. So he started taking very less prasadam. He was not eating much, but he was taking, according to what the devotee said, he was taking a lot. We request with Radhacharan Prabhu. He will come regularly. Please, you eat something. He stopped, at one time he didn't want to go to the temple. He was having his time with his chanting, with the reading. He didn't want to do anything. So I remember Panchagoda Prabhu, we have a meeting with him and some senior devotees. So we respect you. You have done whatever you have to do, so whatever you want to do. So he was very happy with that. That, you know, this is my own thing. He was just contemplating and meditating about what was going to happen, that he was preparing himself to live. So he stopped taking medicines, he stopped doing other things, and so it came to a point that he increased a little bit his eating. We plead him, please, you don't have to do anything, don't take your medicine, just please eat nicely, we want you to be okay. So he started eating again, but at the end of April, he was start to having hard times digesting, so he started to decrease the amount of food. Until what point, one morning I came to him, and I will regularly ask him, what can I do for you? Nothing, no, nothing, nothing. So one day he said, help me to die. I said, okay, you want to do it? He said, yes. Okay, you are ready to go through the process? He said, yes. Okay, okay, let's go through it. And after a while he became contemplative, and then he asked me, you're not worried? He was like surprised that I want to die. You know, all the devotees will come, they will encourage him. You have to get ready to go back to the kitchen, you have to do this, you have to do that. And when he asked me, I want to die, I said, okay, it's time. So he was a little bit shocked, but then he gained confidence when he realized that I was with him. And then he said, he asked me, you're not worried? So I told him, why? I know where you're going. I know who is with you. I'm going to hell. I said, yes, no problem. To hell, to heaven, to Vaikuntha. Prabhupada is with you. Radha Syama Sundar, Krishna Balaram, Gaurnita is with you. So what is the problem? So he was like, he was not believing what I was saying to him, but he gained confidence. So at one point he said, I don't want to eat anymore. I said, okay. So the month of May, the beginning of May, he stopped eating. He was drinking water regularly. Not that much, but like 1 liter of water at least he was drinking. And then one time he asked me, he was contemplative, and he asked me, should I eat something? I said, yes, let me prepare. He was eating some kind of boiled ekadashi, sabji, khichdi that we were preparing. So we prepared one time, he took 2-3 spoons, that's enough. The next day, 2 spoons, that's enough. He said, I can't digest anymore. After 2 days, again he asked me, should I eat something? But I don't know what to eat. Everything is there's no hope, he will say. There's no hope. I said, let me bring you soup. So that day we prepared pumpkin soup, and he took 1 spoon, and he said, that's it. I cannot take it anymore. And so the last 2 weeks, he was with nothing. So his body became very, very thin, very weak. And Nrsimha Chaturdasi, I think, the day before Nrsimha Chaturdasi, he stopped drinking also. So I became a little bit serious. and sad that the time was coming. One thing that I also would like to say is that about his simplicity, and also that he will never complain about anything. I never heard complaining about anyone, nor about his condition. He was just there, just tolerating whatever was there, but it never came through his mouth anything as a complaint or to anyone nor to anything. The only thing that he will complain is when I will come by to him. Sometimes he will sit, and he was like in this position. So I will sit in the bed with him, and I will start to come closer, and I will grab his hand, and I will start to come closer, and he will look at me, why you're coming too close? And then after that, I will just come really next to him. I will embrace him, you know, and I will be there. And he was like trying to, like, not want it, but wanting, you know. And I will be there for some time. Why are you doing this? I said, we love you, Prabhu. No, that's not true. So every day was like that. So that's why, that's, I think, the only time when he was complaining about this personality that is coming to serve him and disturbing him. Yeah. I'm very fortunate and grateful that I have his association. We have a lot of exchanges in his way. We were not talking too much, but we will look and stare at each other for long times, and we will express a lot of things. And if you know him, he will go through some expressions, you know, like he will rise. He was very beautiful. When you stare at him and you contemplate, he has this beautiful, like blue-grayish eyes, and his expression was very much like a seer. I don't know how to, you know, like it was like a knight, you know. Yeah, aristocratic. Yes. So I think he was waiting for his god brothers. At least Panchagauda Prabhu and Shrutakirti Prabhu came to visit him that morning after some time, after the lockdown. And immediately after they left the room, he started to breathe heavily and start to shake. That's when I called Radhacharan Prabhu. I said, Prabhu, let's check on him because something is not going on the right way. It was around 11:30, so we realized that his oxygen levels were less than the normal. So we arranged for the oxygen machine to come, and so we put the oxygen mask. He refused. He looked at me like, why you brought this? You know, I'm not dying. I said, okay, even if you're not dying, you have to breathe and your levels are low, so you please, no, it's okay, I don't need it. Then at one point, devotees start to come to the room, start chanting. So I was a little bit taking a back seat, and I realized at one point, devotees start chanting loudly. And I got a little bit aware, so I came closer, and he was with his hand. So the devotees start chanting even more louder, you know. But then I look at him and understanding his hand movings, because many times he won't speak, he will just move the hand, and you have to understand what he wanted. So I realized that it was not about chanting. He wanted to everyone leave the room. You know, he was saying, just get out of here. But the devotees, in their enthusiasm, were chanting stronger, louder and louder. Yes. Yeah, he was very, his way of joking was like sometimes a little bit dry or heavy. So in this mood, like of his way of expressing his, he was uncomfortable with his situations. He will regularly say, you know, I'm in Maya, I'm a demon, you know, drag me in the Yamuna, or bring a rope. You have a gun? So he will tell me, you have a gun? Come, bring it and shoot me. I said, okay, Prabhu, yes, I have a gun. I will bring it, but I won't shoot you. If you want to do it your own self, you know, don't blame me. Then, no, not a gun. Bring a rope and hang me. You know, he was like that. I said, Prabhu, there's no need for that. So he was going back and forth with that. Yes. Okay, yeah. So when the time came that he was a little bit in this last moment, so he has a Krishna Balaram frame picture, big picture, that he has close to him. So I put, because he was just on one position to his left side, so I put it in front of him so he can look at Krishna Balaram. So at the beginning he called me. I said, yes. I said, why? No, take it out. I said, no, let Krishna Balaram be with you. So at the beginning he was looking some other side, but then he was really staring at Krishna Balaram, and he really got his meditation. And at some moment he will raise his hand and he will touch Krishna Balaram legs, and yeah. Yes. So please, Bhuvaneswara Prabhu, forgive my offenses and my negligence and my way to behave towards you. It was everything done from the deepest of my heart to give you some love and some comfort. I hope you take it that way. I will remember you as a very important person in my life. His Grace, Bhuvaneswara Prabhu Ki Jai.
We'd like to thank Jaganivas Prabhu for his wonderful memories of the last days of Bhuvaneswar. And on behalf of the whole community, we want to offer our great thank you for taking care of Bhuvaneswar for so long under so difficult situation. Next, we'd like to ask Ishwar Prabhu. Oh yeah, he's on the list. Where are you going? We have Ishwar Prabhu, Sarvabhaum Prabhu, and a Kitchen Prabhu, and a couple of letters.
Gurave Gurachandaya Radikatadalaya Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha Vanchaka Bhaturubhyascha Kripa Srimrivacha Patitanam Pavanabhya Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha. Bhuvaneswara Prabhu Ki. So, a lot of good things have been said about Bhuvaneswara Prabhu. And of course, there's just like there's no limit to how much we can glorify Lord Krishna. Similarly, also there's no limit how much his devotees can be glorified. So, as I said, a lot of good things have been said. And of course, when I first came to Vrindavan in 1995, that time just came from America, and I was kind of a little bit bewildered because, you know, somebody coming from the West, and then you landed in India, everything was not in the Krishna book, because we had read something in the Krishna book like, you know, Vrindavan, land of Krishna's days, but you came to India, it's not as you have read the Krishna book. So there was kind of disappointment, but when I came to Vrindavan, and the first person who actually came to me was HGBhuvanesvara Prabhu. And I was telling him how you should be careful on what you eat, what you drink, this and that, this and that. So in this way, it was kind of encouraging in that way. So over the years, I have some, you know, kind of association with him. And of course, as everybody have described, the simplicity aspect of Bhuvaneswara Prabhu is very simple, which is the quality of a Vaishnava, because one cannot really be a Vaishnava unless one is simple. Because the opposite of simplicity is a crookedness. So the only way to attain Krishna Bhakti is through that simplicity. So I know this very much about him. And then another significant quality of him is the fact that he's very, very much attached to Srila Prabhupada's teaching. Very, very much attached. So, you know, I happen to be in charge of Srila Prabhupada's media, you know, originator of Prabhupada's multimedia, video, audio. So whenever we come up with a new audio release in terms of the DVDs or CD, so Bhuvaneswara Prabhu will always ask me that what is the latest, what is the latest? So over the years, I've always been giving him all the Prabhupada's in the multimedia, all the Prabhupada's audio and video. And the last one I gave him, which was that's actually a few months ago, before he got very, very sick, was because we have produced the Prabhupada's audio on USB pen drive. Everything is on USB. So I went to his room, so I gave that to him, and was, you know, very, very much, you know, much happy, you know, with that. So, so apart from that relationship, you know, and of course, many devotees who have much more significant relationship with him, they first said it, like Panchagoda Prabhu, Sanakshana Prabhu, and all the senior devotees, they fall, you know, said so much about him. So, as they say, a Vaishnava is Jivava Marova, you know, Jivava Marova, like, you know, a Vaishnava who is already engaging in the service of Krishna. Even though when he leaves his body, he will continue to do the same thing. You know, when the sage is telling someone that Ma Maro, tell another person, Ma Jiva, don't die or don't live. But for the Vaishnava, he said, it doesn't matter if you are alive or if you are dead, because you are the same thing. Because what you are doing now is the same thing you'll be doing when you leave your body. So Bhuvaneswara Prabhu, he was, you know, dedicated, you know, engaging in the cooking for Krishna Balaram Radhesham for, you know, all these numbers of years with utmost dedication. So ultimately, he leaves his body, he will continue in the same thing. So which means we do not lament for his departure, because he's rightly situated, but our lamentation is the fact that we will not be having the association of such great caliber of devotees anymore, because it's no more in our eye. But he's rightly situated, he's engaging in the eternal service of the Lord. So that is the glorious, you know, aspect of the Vaishnava. And when such Vaishnava, when they leave the material environment, the demigods, they play drums, they celebrate. when they see the departure of Vaishnav, it's a very joyous location. By the demigod, they dance, they celebrate, and all that. So, it's a great opportunity for someone like myself that I was able to be of some service to Bhuvaneswara Prabhu. So, Bhuvaneswara Prabhu ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Hare Krishna.
So we'd like to thank Ishwar Prabhu for his memories of Bhuvaneswara Prabhu. So we'd like to call the Kinchan Krishna, who's been sitting very patiently. Please offer your homages.
Panchakalpatrubhyascha kripa sindhu bhayevacha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. So many have spoken very nicely. A few devotees asked me to just try to remember stories of Bhuvaneswara Prabhu. The first time I saw him, when I first came to Vrindavan, I was in the lobby of the guest house, and there were two devotees there playing chess. And Bhuvaneswara Prabhu, he walked by and he was chanting on his japa, and he just looked at them and he said, "Why would you waste your time in Vrindavan?" In 2002, I came here to join the 24-hour Kirtan party, and somehow Bhuvaneswara Prabhu always had a connection with the devotees in the 24-hour Kirtan. I think now, even the devotees now, many of my friends from the past that were here at different times, Bhuvaneswara, he just latched on to me. And he was a very strong person, and I could never refuse him. In those days, I was practically spending morning, noon, and night with him. Mostly he would have me reading Shastra to him. At some point he had me in the kitchen. Even he was taking me, I was doing the 7 to 10 morning shift at the time of Bhagavatam class, chanting japa to keep the Akhanda Nam with others. And Bhuvaneswara, he would just, that's not important. Someone else can do that. And he would pull me into the kitchen, and it was incredible to watch him cook, because he was, even at that time, he was kind of an older, frail person. And it was like, just by his experience, it was amazing. He was so fluid in the kitchen. I felt there was not one extraneous movement. He didn't do one thing more than necessary. It was like he had it down to such a complete science. Just, the whole way that he moved through everything, I felt he did not stir the pot one time more than absolutely was required. When he would have me grind things in the blender, I especially remember tomatoes and maybe nuts for the sweets and stuff like that. And anyway, I told this already, but after I would grind something and then I would go to clean it, and even sometimes then he would say, "Hey, I didn't tell you to do that." It was too much. It was an unnecessary movement to clean it, because he knew that the next thing that needed to go in the grinder, it didn't need to get cleaned. And anyway, another story I told the other day. One time I was working in the corner, and somehow I had put one thing. I had switched the places, the cutting board was over here and the bowl with the item was over there, and I kind of shifted it around, and he looked around and he said, "Hey, why'd you move that?" And I said, oh no, I just thought it would be better if it was over here. And he said, I don't pay you to think. And whenever I was done, you know, when the service was done, he would dismiss me by saying, all right, go play in traffic. He asked me one time, you know, if I knew how to cook. And so I said, yes, Prabhu, I know a little bit of cooking. He said, do you know how to make rice? Yes. Do you know how to make sabji? Yes. Do you know how to make chapatis? Yes. Do you know how to make dal? Yes. Do you know how to make puris? Yes. Do you know how to make samosas? No. Do you know how to make kachoris? No. Do you know how to make rasgullas? No. Do you know how to make gulab jamans? No, I don't know how to make that. And then he just thought for a minute, he goes, so none of the fancy stuff. He said, half your life is wasted. He told me a very beautiful, powerful story. He told me he joined as a young man in his early 20s, maybe around 25, something like that. His parents died. I don't remember the circumstance, how his parents died. But his parents died, and they left him an inheritance. And it was something substantial. And maybe he was already part of Krishna consciousness. He must have been. And so he said, so at that time, the devotees preached to me, you should give half of that inheritance to Prabhupada. And his answer was, why just half? I'm not a grihasta. And so he gave the whole thing. And then he said, and since that time, I have never been in want for anything. And I practically experienced that in several ways. I saw that he never wanted anything for his sense gratification. He never indulged in luxury. Already so many people have said this. Mars spoke so nicely. He was a Kinchana Vaishnava. I think that's a beautiful description. He never desired anything extraneous. But for his service, he had so many things that he needed. Like Shastra was saying, he needed the saffron and the blue tack and the fishing line, to hold up the deity clothes, and the dry fruits and the nuts and everything like that. And it was just like mystical. When he needed things, when he wanted things, all those things would come to him. One time I remember I came in the evening, and unfortunately I forgot the occasion, but there was a festival happening in Vrindavan, and he wanted to see some of the major temples of Vrindavan. And I came to the room and he said, hey, we're gonna go out on parikram. And immediately I felt like I was so stupid because I didn't have any money with me. And I was thinking, how are we gonna pay for the rickshaw? And somehow we walked out the guest house gate, and within like 3 steps, some humble devotee, kind of Hare Krishna Bhuvanesvara Prabhu, had said, hey, you have a car? And then he said, yes, Prabhu, I have a car. And then, he said, okay, we're going here, we're going there, we're going to Radha Gopinath, we're going to Radha Shamasundar. Immediately, the ride was like arranged, it all worked out, and I was like amazed. We were sitting in like a nice car, and we did the whole parikram. And another thing he told me, about 5 or 6 years ago, he needed to renew his visa, and at that time it made sense to go to Melbourne, Australia for whatever they must have had a good connection there with the embassy. So he told me, he said, I did not have to take 1 paisa from the temple. Somehow he arranged all the funds himself for his travel. And he said, even when he was in Australia, at one point, someone just gave him a donation of something like 80 Australian dollars. And then he said, I had to go to the market to purchase some things. I'm sure it meant for the deities. He had a shopping list of things that he wanted to purchase. So he went to the store, and he said, when the cashier rung up all the items, it came to like $79.54 or something, like just exactly what had been given to him. So like that, I always saw he was a very blessed person. Just I'll preface, I have to speak a little small thing about myself, but you know, when I was first getting to I must have told him different things about myself, and one thing I had told him, my parents were very, very disagreeable to my involvement in Krishna consciousness, and there were some very strong comments that they made. At one point they said, at least if you were a drug addict, that's something we could understand. But you becoming a Hare Krishna, we can't understand that. That was one thing. And another comment they said was, my stepfather said, even the man that is pumping gas at the gas station is making some kind of contribution to this society. What you do has no value. So anyway, Bhubaneswar heard those things. You know, I must have said them. And then some time passed. You know, he used to live in a room right below Radha Shama Sundar, and there were many senior devotees would come to visit him, and there were many times where, you know, I would be there reading, and he would have a guest, and a few times he would just, you know, he would meet the guest would be there, and to introduce me, he would say, "This is a Kinchana Krishna Das." His parents would prefer he was a drug addict. And there was another time in the kitchen, and I mean, this was a stunning one because it happened years later. You know, I did something, I was doing something in the kitchen with him, and I made a mistake. I did something that he didn't, you know, that I didn't do something correctly. And he said, "Didn't your stepfather say you'd be more useful pumping petrol?" He was probably right. He would always, you know, every day I was coming for the Rajbhog Mahaprasadam, and you know, there was always 4 sabjis, and he would always ask, you know, which one's the best, and then, you know, whatever you'd say, maybe I like the peas with the paneer and the tomato, or I like the ones that I remember was like you were mentioning, the cauliflower with the cream sauce. There was a bitter sabji, and maybe a spinach sabji. Those were like the standard ones. So you always say, which one's the best? He told me, he said, I never experiment on Krishna. I only make things that I know I can make nicely. When, you know, there was often rasgullas with the Mahaprasad, he would always ask, does it squeak? Because something maybe Prabhupada said, when you chew it, it should squeak, and it always squeaked, and he would always ask that. There was one time, maybe it was a different period, I independently purchased a box of Mahaprasadam, which means one of the full deity plates, and I told him that, and he said, you ate the whole thing? And I said, yes, Prabhu, I ate the whole thing. I said, how could you have eaten the whole thing? Nobody eats the whole thing. And then he was talking about some, you know, bigger god brothers. Maybe he said, like, even Vaisheshika Prabhu can't eat the whole thing. How could you eat the whole thing? He would always have his comments about different prasadam. You know, I remember, anyway, in later years, I remember how he would just go to all the different sweet stands and the bakeries, and just, there's no question of him making any payment. He would just demand, like, hey, give me that. And he would try it, and, you know, sometimes it passed the inspection, and sometimes it didn't pass. You know, hey, why are you making this? You know, this is no good. You shouldn't make this. Why are you making this? Or or some other temple project he visited, he said something how, they make so many useless cakes. I don't know why they make so many useless cakes. He would give his commentaries on the Bhagavatam class, and sometimes if maybe it wasn't spoken so well, especially, I remember when I was sitting in the Tulsi Stamba for 24-hour kirtan, he would come past and he would say, "Is this a jibber-jabber class?" Sometimes I would, anyway, in some past years I was called on to give class, and so I would tell him, I don't know what to say. He would always invite me to his room. Okay, come to my room. Always come to my room. And we would read the verse and the purport. And even if we didn't discuss so much, just somehow being in his association, then some inspiration would come. And he told me once how to give a class. I said, I'm going to have to give a class. I don't know what I'm going to say. And he would say, he said, you just have to quote a shloka from Bhagavad Gita, tell a few jokes, tell the story of how you came to Krishna consciousness. And he said, and you can sing the Jaya Radha Madhava for longer. That'll make the time go by. One time, I was young, I was very foolish, but I was in America, and he asked me, he would write me some emails, and they were very, very simple. And at one point, he wrote something probably like, please send one airline ticket, from India to USA. Or so he asked that from me, and it put me in complete anxiety, because that's an expensive thing. I mean, maybe it's $800, $1,000, and I didn't feel financially in a position to do that. In retrospect, I wished I had just, responded by telling him what I could give, and that I could have given him that. But anyway, I was too inexperienced and stupid. Somehow I just was in extreme anxiety. He was asking me for the full airfare, and I didn't feel like I could do that. And I thought, now I'm going to hurt my relationship with Bhubaneswar. I don't want to refuse him. I have so much respect for him. I was consulting with other devotees. What do I do? What do I say? It's like my guru is asking me to do this, and I can't do this. And anyway, at the end, I just told Bhubaneswar that I wasn't able to do it. And he immediately backed off. He was like completely detached. He said, oh, okay, I thought you had some money. Completely detached, never brought it up again. One time I had been out of Vrindavan, and I returned here to Krishna Balaram Temple after a long period. And Bhubaneswar, of course, was one of the people I was very excited to meet. And I saw him at the Tulsi Puja, and my sentiment was like, Haribol, Bhubaneswar Prabhu. But before I could say anything like that, he just said to me, hey, you can't buy a ticket to Vrindavan. How did you get here? I didn't say so much about, how the reading. I'll try to say something about that. But, we read Krishna book many times. And at one point, we were reading the chapter of Radharani speaking to the bumblebee. And at one point in that chapter, she calls the bumblebee, you are an unreliable servant of an unreliable master. So that was kind of like in the background. And then maybe a week later, probably I showed up late or something I did not correctly to what he wanted. I came to his room late, and he was, frustrated, like, hey, where were you? Where are you? And, oh, sorry, Prabhu. And he said, you unreliable servant of an unreliable master. He told me, it's a rare person that can do the same service every day, year after year. He used to have different kind of mantras, meaning like small kind of spiritual instructions. He would have something would be in his mind, and he would kind of preach that again and again. And a few of the ones I remembered, he at one point he would say, he said, Mangal means auspicious. If you don't go to Mangal Artik, your day's not auspicious. He had a thing about no one-handed obeisances. He read somewhere in Shastra that if you offer obeisances only with one hand, then the power is lost or something like that. And so he'd go, hey, no one-handed obeisances. He often he would stand on the steps there, leading to the altar, and while the kirtan was going on, he would. I think it was in a sweet, joking way to kind of keep everybody humble, and so he would just kind of stand on the stairs and kind of mock us, And I remember him also saying, we'd hear a certain singer would sing, and he said, it was a little flat. Or he would say, someone would start singing on the radio, and he would say, he said, he should make a CD. We'll call it Best of Krishna Balaram. And it was always completely sarcastic. At one point he said, who was singing on the radio last night? And he told the time, and I said, oh, that was me, Prabhu. And he said, oh, it was very nice. And I said, and who was singing this morning? And he told me the time. And I said, oh, that was also me, Prabhu. And he didn't say anything. And I said, oh, it wasn't nice? And he said, it was standard. Yeah, so most of the time we were reading Shastra, and just when I think about all the Shastra that we read, I mean, he was the best influence, the best reading partner. At one point I understood we went through the whole Chaitanya Bhagavat 3.5 times. At the end of the Chaitanya Bhagavat, in the final portion, there's a section about Bhubaneswara, glorifying Bhubaneswara and its connection to Lord Shiva. And he said, a few times, he said, they named the whole city after me. Yeah, whenever we would read the Krishna book, especially, I remember every story, I would start a new chapter, read the chapter title, and he would just say, that's my favorite story. And it was for every story. Please don't mind. Madhava Prabhu was doing his kirtans in the MVT garden, and if you remember, it was quite a nice scene. He had many devotees, everybody's chanting enthusiastically. And so Bhubaneswar came to me and he said, I saw Madhava chanting in the MVT. And then he said, guy must have some Shakti. He just sings the same tune every time. Or there was another time, my friend Krishna Kishore, who's famous as one of the Mayapuris. He was here, he's a second-generation devotee, very nice kirtan leader, and he was leading the kirtan, and at that time he had long hair, which he had tied in a ponytail. And so the kirtan was going on, and Bhubaneswar just came up behind me and he said, hey, what's going on? we don't let hippies sing here. Sometimes I would ask him, when I was in his room, Prabhu, may I use your bathroom? Or may I take a cup of water? And he would say, yes, 10 rupees. There was a senior devotee that came to his room once, and it must have been like a sunny summer season. He was a sannyasi, is a sannyasi. And he had like kind of a sun hat. Sometimes devotees wear on parikram. It has like the rim to protect from the sun. And, and he came in and immediately Bhuvaneshwar said, hey, what's with that hat? And this Maharaj said, he became a little self-conscious and he said, oh, I was just trying to wear something that fits with the dhoti. And Bhuvaneshwar said, that's not the one. And that same visit, Bhuvaneshwar had been sick, and so that Maharaj was asking him, how is your health? And Bhuvaneshwar said that he had recovered, and I think he had recovered with, he didn't require doctors or things like that. And the Maharaj said, wow, it's a miracle. This is the mercy of the Mahaprasadam. And so Bhuvaneshwar answered by saying, he said, well, must have been the Mahaprasadam that got me sick too. That's all I ever eat. Sorry, is it too much time? Okay. I'm so sorry, I have so many more things to say. In 2020, I felt Bhuvaneshwar became much more silent, much more old. It was very heavy, actually. I felt like he had aged, and I didn't see it coming, what was happening. I just felt he became much less talkative, much less full of jokes. Actually, we were reading 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam at that time. And formerly, he would always want to speak after the reading was done, and then he became much more silent. There was a devotee, Karabhajan, who must be around somewhere, and he was more regular than me, coming every night for reading. And Karabhajan Prabhu, he's an elder Indian gentleman. He had a very nice culture that he would go to Bhuvaneshwar and get a pat on the head. And so I also wanted a pat on the head. And Karabhajan said, and Bhuvaneshwar, he said, no, that's not necessary. And Karabhajan said, you should pat him on the head. He's like your son. I'm sorry. At one point, it was in Kartik, Bhuvaneshwar Prabhu's condition became very, very bad. And I tried to visit him. And at one point, I visited him. He was alone on his bed. He was kind of curled up. It was quite a horrible scene. And I just thought, there was the Krishna book on the desk, and I thought to read it, but I thought it would be a disturbance, so I didn't read it, but I stayed in and I read silently to myself for some time. And then he went to that hospital in Gurgaon, and on the second day of being in that hospital, he called me. And it was the most clear I had heard him in like 1 or 2 years. I mean, you know, in like the last year, he was crystal clear. And he said, you know, Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. He said, please excuse me for my offenses. Please excuse me for my offenses. And I said, Prabhu, you never offended me. He said, yes, I did. You came into my room and I didn't speak to you. That's the problem. I couldn't speak to anybody. It's my mind. My mind is sick. And he was criticizing himself, and he was criticizing any, you know, difficulties that he had in his sadhana, and from that I could really understand his condition at the end. It was just some external covering somehow or other. It was just some mental trouble that he had, but just beneath the surface, the old Bhubaneswar is there, and he is a very great soul. Maybe I'll just leave it there. If anybody ever wants to discuss Bhubaneswar Prabhu with me, I'll be very, very happy. It would really enliven me to trigger more memories of such an incredible person. I feel very lucky to have known Bhubaneswar Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Bhubaneswar Prabhu ki jai. So we'd like to thank Akinchana Prabhu for some very personal, wonderful memories of Bhubaneswar. Now we'd like to ask Sarvabhauma Prabhu to make his offering.
Bhuvaneswar Prabhu ki. I'll say only 3 things. Well, for last 25-6 years, we are together in Vrindavan with Bhubaneswar. I had personal service to him when he was living downstairs and he got fracture of his neck of femur. And I went all the way down and we took him to the hospital, got fixed it. And then he got this little trouble. That was the service at that time we were rendering to Bhubaneswar Prabhu. The things which I want to say is number 1. He was determined to die. It means there is some sweetness in death which he has only experienced. There is something, maybe younger generation may not know it, but he was determined to die. It means there is some sweetness in death. And he chosen Vrindavan, as we all know. So he's gone back to Golok. The proof of that is we are glorifying in front of the open curtain of the deities, which is not possible for ordinary person. It's not possible for any ordinary person. And it is, Shastra says nobody should be glorified in front of the open doors of the deities. A person who is glorified is definitely pure devotee, and he used to say, I heard, that I am the spoon in Radharani's kitchen. He said, my identity is I am a spoon in Radharani's kitchen. So this is the second thing. First thing is we are determined to death. It means there is some sweetness in death which only liberated soul can realize. So death means meeting Krishna. Curtain is over. Going back to his service. That he realized definitely. And then we are getting his glorification. Number 2. And number 3, whenever he was passing in this room and I was sitting out, he said, hey doctor, can you cure my lusty desire? There was only one question he used to ask. I will give you prasad, he says. He said, sure, I have prasad. Can you treat my lust? It means he was knowing that lust is the only shackle in this material world which is binding everybody. So his answer was, his question was very deep into the Shastra. Oh doctor, can you cure my lust? And this is the question. And then he laughs and goes. So these are the three things only I have to contribute. He was determined to die. It means there is sweetness in death. Those who realize they are liberated. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Bhuvaneswara Prabhu ki jai.
Okay, we have a few more written offerings. So I have here from Jai Nitai Gordas. Was he a friend? He was too elevated devotee for me to consider him a friend. He was my superior in spiritual life. When I was in Vrindavan studying scriptures, I stayed with him. I had read for him every night. He told me a story. Once as a young brahmachari celibate, he began to think about finding a wife. His mentor at that time told him, "You will never get married. You are too ugly." He showed me a picture of himself in his youth, and I said, "That man was wrong. You look so handsome. I'm sure you could have had any girl you wanted." He laughed and laughed and laughed. He never married. Once I asked him if I can arrange for full Rajabhog, Radhesham Mahaplate. I told him I want the whole thing and I want to eat all of it. One full plate is normally for 6 to 7 people. He told me to wait for him when he finishes his cooking. When I arrived, he was already waiting for me, and he told the pujari to bring the whole Radhesham plate directly from the altar. We sat down in the room, and he took a morsel of food from my plate. I began to eat. He finished his meal in a minute or two, and then he just looked at me eating and eating and eating and eating. He stared at me in bliss, wishing he could enjoy as much as I did. He looked on without blinking. He smiled in transcendental bliss, appreciating my own blissful situation. For many years I had not seen him because I had never returned to Vrindavan after 2008, but I thought of him many times. Because he was old, I knew he would leave soon, but I prayed to Krishna to be able to talk to him again in his room, in Vrindavan before he departs. Sometimes Krishna won't fulfill devotees' desire. Now I regret not getting this opportunity. You left too soon. I wanted to clean your room, especially nice, and wash all your clothes. And read to you again and again from Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada Lilamrita, or Brihad Bhagavatamrita. I want to laugh again with you, watching drama performed by devotees on low-tech video player. You are now with your beloved spiritual master, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and you are happy, finally supremely blissful in your spiritual body. Dear Bhuvaneswara Prabhu, the news of your departure are saddest news I received this year. I truly wanted to see you at least one more time. When I stayed with you in Vrindavan, you woke me up 10 to 4 in the morning. You poked me, wake up, pay obeisance to your guru, pay obeisance to your guru, wake up, Mangalarti. Every Ekadasi you took me out to see the temples established by the 6 Goswamis. When we returned, you asked me which temple I liked most. I replied, Radharaman. Your eyes lit, but you didn't say anything, just smiled. This is from Gopal Prabhu, from 24-hour Kirtan. Today I will try to remember the glories of your association. I first met you at Bhaktivedanta Manor, UK in 1996 summer, while you were waiting for your 5-year visa. You were cooking the Rajbhog offering when I went to see my mother in the deity's kitchen, as her service was as that was her service for 20 plus years. We met at the Arti and exchanges between us forged a lifetime friendship. I only really got close to you when I became a 24-hour Kirtan Brahmachari in year 2000. After 10 to 1 p.m. Kirtan shift, you called me a few times to the deity kitchen to wash their lordship's plates. and bowls, as sometimes a devotee would fail to do this service. I would be rewarded with a leaf cup of Mahaprasadam, which was blissful to honor. On one of those occasions, Ainda Prabhu saw me washing the Lord's plates and looked at you, and then you looked at me and said, just make sure this doesn't take you away from your 24-hour kirtan service. During one long hot summer, we cut a deal and together rented an MVT air-conditioned apartment for the Mahaprasadam in exchange every day, which you had me give you an improvement report. You were so into cooking for the Lordships with love and perfection at heart. Sometimes when I would get burned out with 24-hour kirtan service, I would go to preach in the West for the summer months, and upon return come back with your shopping list of boga for their Lordships. The most sort of items starting with pure saffron, a variety of dried fruits, pins, blue tack, medicine. One time I asked the Bhaktivedanta Manor head pujari for boga, and upon hearing a request, he said, yes, for Bhuvanesvara Prabhu, sure, I will arrange everything. When the news came to light about the adulation of ghee, I know what that means, I would then source as much ghee as the priority during visits to the Western world. Once visiting Australia, you had me bring back 20 kg bucket of ghee and 10-liter bucket of honey. You're always fixed on offering the Lordships the best ingredients. If something was substandard, you would not accept it. Upon returning to Vrindavan for Lord Balaram's appearance day 2003, I found out you had slipped and broken your thigh bone. I visited you in your room. To my shock and horror, you had a series of metal bolts sticking out of your leg, connected to a metal plate, and with very limited painful mobility. You grabbed my hand and said, please, please stay with me, help me. I immediately moved in and assisted you in personal care up to the evening before Janmashtami, when Ainda Prabhu gave me an ultimatum. It's him or me. I need you tomorrow. Fortunately, by then the doctors had removed the bolts and you were on your path to healthy healing. Another devotee was arranged. We could all see how difficult it was for you to be in a wheelchair, later a walker. Not being able to do your service was a very challenging period for you. Sometimes during the summer months, you would request me to assist you in the kitchen, so I would arrange my kirtan service around the time you needed me. In the kitchen, I felt like an extension of you, not to move a thing or do anything unless you said so. During one Purushottam Mass, I honored prasadam with you every day, sometimes alongside Vaisheshekha Prabhu, who gave a rating chart of 1 to 10. And his response was, it's off the charts. Your way of making the daily sweet was so special, I would keep a minimum budget just to buy the Mahaprasad sweets when availability was limited. I know where your stash was in your room. As a brahmachari, you were an inspiration. You had arrived in 1986 and shared a room with Ainda Prabhu alongside traveling to Mayapur Festival for the 500th celebration. You told me stories of the past, including how you attended a preaching program in Calcutta with Srila Prabhupada, how you were sent to Japan to cook for Guru Kripa's party. I didn't know that. What a strict brahmachari. You were chastising me for missing Srila Prabhupada's Mangalarti. Your chastising came in the form of one-line sentences known as rips, leaving me not knowing if it was hardcore dry sarcasm or actually exposing Maya to my face. Some of the classics. You're in Maya. After praying pranams to him. Oh, so now you're humble? Even in a phone call from London last Janmashtami, I said, please accept my humble. You still think you're humble? Shave up. When are you going to get out of Maya? Get out of Maya and come for Mangalarti. During this summer, monkeys are drinking thumbs up. during monsoon, it's raising hogs and dogs while keeping a straight face the whole time. Once you were awaiting a visa extension while discussion was going on about getting citizenship. I asked you about all the steps you required your response was clear as mud. When some ingredients ran out or you really needed it for making some sweet, you would say, go to Gupta's junk shop in Loy Bazaar and buy this. When I was leaving the Brahmachari ashram, I came to ask for your blessings. Your reply was, damned if you do, damned if you don't. When you heard about a devotee getting the rare 5-year visa, you could fly out to anywhere in the world to secure your service in Vrindavan. Sometimes when Indra Prabhu in the 24-hour kirtan would attend some of the Mayapur festival, you would come along booking a flight. We'd meet up in Mayapur on a ground floor. We met up in Mayapur in a ground floor room as stairs was a super challenge. You were so happy for the little break, explaining how entertaining it was to see the Kirtan party checking in for the domestic flight. Indra Prabhu, Ram Roy, Bhagavat Puran, Vrindavan Das, his dad, dancing Bhaktavatar, and others. You would have me arrange for date Gur Jaggery to be sent to Vrindavan. One time I came to Vrindavan for Kartik. Upon seeing me, you said, did you bring anything for their lordships? I had not. How dare you come back without bringing something? I immediately apologized, and to get out of it, you said I would arrange something. I said I would arrange something. Almost every time thereafter, I would call you for the shopping list. Some Ekadasi, you would not cook and requested we go to Govardhan, especially like in Govindakund. Sometimes Radhadar temple to see Prabhupada's rooms. To my understanding, unless you were sick, your attending of Mangalarti was strict and punctual. Before the last Purushottam Mass, we spoke briefly about the shopping list for your services. When we meet to deliver a box of items, you seem to be very deep and somber with a mood of great humility and no jokes. This seemed to carry on in Kartik, and before we knew it, you were awaiting your final journey back to home, back to Godhead. How glorious to have served a lifetime in ISKCON Vrindavan's deity department in Sri Vrindavan Dham. I am sure Srimati Radharani has you by her side, assisting her in the kitchen cooking for Lord Krishna. Yours humbly, Gopal Das. You want to read it? My voice is finished.
This is the offering from Bhima Prabhu. Bhuvaneswara Prabhu joined in Los Angeles and joined the Radha Damodar traveling Sankirtan party. He was on Kavi Chandra Maharaj's bus cooking. I associated with him from that time as I was also on the same bus party. Bhuvaneswara Prabhu, after serving in Chicago, came to India in January 1986. He was in charge of the Sankirtan office in Vrindavan for some years. Vaishnav Maharaj and Saranga Thakur Prabhu were with him. When Dadu Vibhu Chaitanya Prabhu became too old, Bhuvaneswara Prabhu took over Radharani's kitchen, a service he continued all these years. Bhuvaneswara Prabhu was always engaged. If he wasn't cooking or doing kirtan, he would have devotees read to him. A wonderful friend and will be missed. Vrindavan won't be the same without him. And this is an offering from Mukunda Datta Prabhu, Srila Prabhupada's disciple. There are too many things I would like to say in glorification of Bhuvaneshwar Prabhu's sublime character, example and deep devotion. But time is limited, so I will try to be brief. We are all feeling the absence of Bhu Prabhu now. I knew him since our Radha Damodar days, when he was a grumpy but blissful cook who also danced like a madman in Kirtan. When I came to Vrindavan, after not seeing him for decades, I was very happy to get Bhu's satsanga for Rajbhoga Prasad from time to time, which he kindly saved for me, unsolicited. Alas, those days will no longer return in this life. In his later years, Bhu's kirtans enlivened everyone. I always hoped that they would invite him to the kirtan melas, but somehow they never did. Personally, I feel the 7 a.m. kirtans in Vrindavan will never be the quite same without him. I have kept my recordings of his kirtan because they were pure Jnana Karmadi Anavritam. He was such a staunch brahmachari that if my wife answered my phone whenever Bhu called, he wouldn't even speak to her. But he was also very jovial, simple, and satisfied. His tremendous sense of humor is celebrated worldwide. He always sent me and others transcendental text messages, including this favorite that I was surprised to receive one day at 2 a.m. The boys in the 24-hour kirtan say, I rock the house. Bhu Prabhu was an understated pillar of the Vrindavan temple, and I will very much miss his moderate humor. Bright blue eyes, his warm smile, gruff demeanor, humorous criticism, soft heart, example of serious commitment, humble kirtans, compassion, simplicity, simple but deeply realized classes, and his irreplaceable cooking. I humbly offer my respectful obeisances to his lotus feet and pray for his blessings. Bhuvaneshwar Prabhu ki jai. Mukunda Datta Das, ACBSP. So, I have few memories of Bhuvaneshwar Prabhu. One time, the FRO Mathura, they wanted to meet him. That was few years before, 5-6 years before. And so they were thinking that, oh, such an old man, how he can be on a student visa. So they wanted to meet him. So I took him in a car, and the main officer, so he was asking him that, how come you were such an old man and you were still studying? And it was about the extension. And he said that we will not extend your visa. So when he heard that, he became very serious. And his eyes became very big, and his head went down. And I became very fearful that I don't know what will happen now. So then the officer became also very fearful by seeing that situation. So he said, okay, we will extend your visa. And now just relax, just relax. So then he became normal again. And so then we came back to the temple here. And then one time on the Jamuna Mataji's disappearance day, so I was taking everyone's name, making the list, so I asked him that please come for some time and offer your, make some offering for Jamuna Mataji. So he wrote on a piece of paper, and then, so he mentioned there that one time Jamuna Mataji came in this pujari room after the Rajbhoga offering, and so she took a rasgulla from the Rajbhoga plate, and she, with a loud voice, she said, "Who made this rasgulla?" And Bhubaneswar Prabhu said that when she said that, I became very fearful, and now I don't know what will happen. And then she said that, in my life, I never see such a beautiful rasgulla. And then he became very happy. And Bhubaneswar Prabhu also used to send me the text messages on Ekadashis and on different days. So on one Ekadashi, Kamika Ekadashi, he said, today is Ekadashi, save the Prajalpa for tomorrow. And he didn't like few things, like last year in the lockdown period, he didn't like the lockdown. He didn't like that devotees are not able to come to the temple, and he didn't like that. And then also he didn't like that for some time we were doing the kirtan without microphone. So he didn't like that either. And then he wrote to me, he said, about wearing the mask. So he said, I have the permission from Panchagaura Prabhu and Mukunda Datta Prabhu, I don't have to wear mask. So these are the few things that I was remembering. But myself and Akinchana Krishna Prabhu, we were discussing at the Jamuna when we had the last ride, that Bhubaneswar Prabhu, he never wasted a single moment. Because in Nectar of Devotion we read that one of the symptoms of a pure devotee who is on the platform of Bhava Bhakti, it is Avyartha Kalatvam, that he never wastes a single moment. And if you see the life of Bhubaneswar Prabhu, starting from Mangalarati, his things are nicely scheduled. What he will do at this point of time, what we will do at this point of time, everything is very nicely scheduled. His kirtan, cooking time, reading time, resting time. Many years before, he used to call me because he took from the Rajbhoga plate very little amount of Rajbhoga, little chapati, little sabji, or some pieces of sweets. And then after he took, then he used to tell me that, okay, you take now. And then I took the prasad, and then he used to ask that, was it okay, the taste is okay? And yes, I said, yes, it was wonderful. But recently, when Bhubaneswar Prabhu used to cook, he used to cook so many different things for their lordships. But one of the items from the Rajbhoga plate was very special to me, was the sour cream cauliflower sabji. And I know no one can make that item. Also his peanut dry sweets. Those two things were like out of the world for me. And we will miss Bhubaneswar Prabhu, but we will continue to remember him, his stories, his different jokes, and hopefully we will find him again at the lotus feet of Srila Prabhupada in the spiritual world. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. His Grace Bhubaneswar Prabhu ki jai.
So this concludes our Smrti Sabha memorial service for His Grace HGBhuvanesvara Prabhu. We thank all the devotees for attentively listening to the glories of this wonderful devotee. All right. Prabhuji's name? Oh, Braja Sundar.
Also, if any 24 hours Kirtan devotee would like to offer any memory with Bhuvaneswar Prabhu, you can come forward. And after the program, we will have the feast at 2 o'clock in Krishna Hall. And for all the senior devotees and Prabhupada disciples, the prasadam will be in the Balaram Hall.
Hare Krishna. A very short and a very interesting talk between Bhuvaneswar Prabhu and His Holiness Radha Govindas Goswami Maharaj. So, Maharaj was giving katha here for 7 days, and Bhuvaneswar Prabhu said, Bhuvaneswar Prabhu told me that he wants to see Maharaj. And I said, okay, I'll ask Maharaj for an appropriate time. So, Bhuvaneswar Prabhu said, please give my Dandavat Pranams to Maharaj. So I went and I gave, and then Maharaj also, he sent back, he said that, give my pranams to him. And he told me that Bhuvaneswar Prabhu is a pure devotee. Maharaj told me. So I said, and I came and told Bhuvaneswar Prabhu that Maharaj says that you are a pure devotee. And then Bhuvaneswar Prabhu, for some reason, he got very upset. He said, what? I am a pure devotee? And the next day, when Maharaj came for the katha, I never expected that. Bhuvaneswar Prabhu just went straight to Maharaj. He caught hold of his hand. I said, how can you say I am a pure devotee? I want to meet you. And then he said, okay, you can come at around afternoon time. So Bhuvaneswar Prabhu, and I took him and we went to Maharaj. And then they had some intimate discussion. I don't want to go into that. But Maharaj praised him. He's saying that because of your service to Krishna Balram, Radha Shyam Sundar for so many years, and Srila Prabhupada ji, you have purified your existence. So there is no doubt in, Maharaj said, there is no doubt in my heart. You are a pure devotee. You have purified your existence. And then after he heard that, Bhuvaneswar started to cry. And then he offered his pranams. And then we left. There are some other discussions, but I just wanted to mention this thing. So Bhuvaneswar Prabhu was a very great soul, as all of you were mentioning, that one of the symptoms was that he never wasted time. And that is a symptom of a great devotee who is always cautious of how each and every moment of his life will be utilized in the service of the Lord. So Bhuvaneswar Prabhu's life was like that. Although he might not be a famous personality, but he was. I mean, in our heart, he was a famous personality, at least in Vrindavan. But he was not as famous as some of other sannyasis or sadhus, but he was a very special person, we all know. So we sincerely thank him because he has left a good mark of impression on us that how to utilize time. I used to get phone calls from him whenever I was in Vrindavan. He used to call me. He says, where are you? So I said, I'm at home. Can you come and wash my clothes? So then I used to come and wash his clothes. Sometimes, I got 3-4 times I got. And then whenever he has eagerness to read, he used to call, where are you? I said, I'm in temple. Can you come and read for me? So when I used to go to his room, he used to take out Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's Sarar Darshini. Okay, read. So, thank you, Bhuvaneswar Prabhu. Thank you for all those memories. And you will always be missed. Thank you very, very much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. This concludes this session of glorification of Bhuvaneswar Prabhu. May he shower his blessings upon us. Hare Krishna.